Chapter 15:14. It did not take long for the Red Genie to think. After about half an hour, it came out of the magic lamp again. It was not as aggressive as it was at the beginning. Instead, the Red Genie seemed to be very quiet. "Mr. Genie, it seems that you have a result, right?" Boss Luo had an impeccable professional smile on his face. He had always regarded his identity as the shop owner as a profession to distinguish himself from the shop owner. However, his emotional problems were gradually fading, and he hadn't gotten a good cure. "I really want to say that your fake smile is annoying." The Red Genie shook its head. "But why do I have a feeling that you are sincere?" Luocho said softly, "Because I hope that every customer who completes a transaction can get what they really want. This is my answer." The Red Genie waved its hand and a patterned card shot towards Luocho. Boss Luo took it over and opened it to have a look. The card with a pattern was written, "Soul." Boss Luo smiled. "It seems that compared to the other two things, Mr. Genie thinks less of your soul." The Red Genie sneered. "As long as I don't die soon. My soul is also important, but at least it belongs to me before I die. Once I leave the magic lamp, I will not die easily with the power of the powerful genie." Luocho slowly put away the card and wished, "I also hope that Mr. Genie can live a long life." "Don't talk so much. I have already agreed to your terms." The Red Genie suppressed its anger. "Hurry up and make your third wish, you cunning guy." "That's true." Boss Luo nodded and pondered, "but I don't know what to wish for since I have to make a wish all of a sudden." It had already signed a contract to sell its soul just so that the other party could make the third wish. Now, it had even sold itself, but the other party was dragging its feet. The Red Genie could not take it anymore. Its voice suddenly became shrill. "I've already agreed to your request." No, please don't misunderstand." Luocho said apologetically, "Please believe me. I didn't mean to make things difficult for you. Dear Mr. Genie, I will fulfill my promise. But, the veins on the genie's forehead were about to jump out. Streams of flames were even spurting out of its nostrils. It gritted its teeth and said, "But what?" Luocho said seriously, "It's just that since it's a rare opportunity to get a wish, of course we have to think carefully about what kind of wish to make. We can't just waste it, right? Didn't you just use up 2 wishes to ask 2 boring questions? Now you're telling me to think about it carefully and not waste it?" The Red Genie was furious. If it were not for its dignity, it would have turned into a giant and stomped the other party to death like an ant. "You've waited for thousands of years. Do you still care about this little bit of time?" Boss Luo said casually, "Mr. Genie." The Red Genie took a deep breath. It did not want to be so angry. The problem was that it had always been a violent person. It had been trapped in the magic lamp all these years, and it did not restrain itself much. In this kind of environment, it would only make its personality worse. "Okay, I'll wait for you here." The Red Genie snorted. "I'll wait until you're willing to make a wish." It felt that as a genie, it had completely disgraced itself in one day. The Red Genie's eyes were about to spit fire. A stool appeared out of thin air and it sat on it. It crossed its arms and shook its legs. "By the way, what will happen to people who don't pass the test?" Boss Luo suddenly asked. The Red Genie said impatiently, "They will fall into an illusion and be unable to extricate themselves. This is a test that reflects what one wants the most in one's heart. It's something that can't be obtained in real life. It's something that one dreams of getting. Once they get it, who would be willing to let it go? Therefore, those who are trapped in the illusion and are unwilling to leave will only have one outcome, which is to starve to death." Boss Luo suddenly looked at the magic lamp on the table. "It doesn't seem to have an illusion function. It was set up by the previous person who summoned me." The Red Genie said impatiently, "He invited a powerful wizard and set up this tunnel that can test one's soul. In the end, the wizard was killed. There should be many corpses outside, right? One of them should be the wizard's." Who cares about that? I'm only concerned about who can pass the test. Boss Luo could not help but be curious, since this is not a test set by the magic lamp itself, but an outsider's. The final result of the test, can the magic lamp accept it? The red genie said impatiently, "Didn't you pass the test and successfully summon me?" Luocho said calmly, "I didn't encounter any illusions on my way here." No? The red genie frowned and shook its head. "Let's not care about that. Anyway, you succeeded in summoning me, didn't you? Only those with a pure soul can be recognized by the magic lamp. Wait, what's going on?" The red genie then realized a problem that it had neglected from the beginning. The magic lamp's attitude was very ambiguous. It did not acknowledge or deny its request. It did not even give any information to the genie of the lamp. All it did was quietly record the number of times the genie of the lamp asked the two questions that the genie of the lamp had already fulfilled. Strange. This is the first time I've encountered something like this. The red genie of the 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 genie, however, the red genie could not understand how the magic lamp could automatically increase the number of times it could fulfill the summoner's wish. The red genie could not help but stare at the magic lamp in its residence. The magic lamp was now dull. Even if it was placed among the many lamps, it seemed to be the most inconspicuous one. It was as if it was saying, "I don't know and I don't dare to ask." What kind of joke was this? The red genie shook its head. It did not care what the magic lamp was doing, as long as it did not reduce the number of times it could fulfill its wish. It did not care about anything else. "Hey, have you thought it through? Mr. Genie, can you reverse time?" Boss Luo asked seriously, "The kind that can turn back time." "Turn back time? That's easy." The red genie laughed without thinking. "Isn't it just turning back time? I thought you were going to make a wish." "Wait, what did you say?" Turn back time, turn back time." Luochu thought for a while and suddenly said with a trace of unrealistic hope, "Turn back time to 4 years ago." The red genie was silent for a while. It looked at the summoner up and down and suddenly said expressionlessly, "Please speak human language." "You can't do it?" Boss Luo's tone seemed to have a trace of disappointment. In fact, such an answer seemed to have been met the moment the question appeared. The trace of unrealistic hope he had was the little bit of humanity he had left. "If I could turn back time, I would definitely go back to the beginning." "Why would I?" The red genie shook its head. "Listen, although the magic lamp can fulfill all the wishes of a person, there is a limit to it, because it has almost considered the limit of human needs from the beginning. The rule of 3 wishes is to avoid the relationship between human greed and this limit. Time is the most powerful force in the world, more powerful than any other force. In the face of time, I will die one day. I can't turn back time. Change it. But, why do you want to turn back time? Is it because of something that you regret? This is simple. You can make a wish and I will make it up for you. The dead can be resurrected, the broken things can be restored. As long as the thing that caused the regret is gone, there is no need to regret. Shouldn't people look forward? You're right. What surprised the red genie was that it felt like the summoner was really listening to it, even though it had lost control of the situation at the beginning. Well, it was an illusion. It must be an illusion. Boss Luo smiled. "Mr. Genie, I want to make a 3rd wish." The red genie suddenly pricked up its ears and rubbed its palms. It became impatient. Boss Luo said slowly, "Can you tell me about your life? From your birth to now?" "What did you say?" The red genie opened its mouth and widened its eyes again. It couldn't even remember how many times it had been surprised in such a short period of time. Luocho said calmly, "I really don't need anything. Since you can't do what I need, why don't you tell me about your life? You must be very lonely, living in the magic lamp all the time, fulfilling the wishes of those who are qualified to summon you, and then returning to the magic lamp again and again. If you don't want it, let's talk." "You!" The Red Genie frowned and suddenly looked at Zhang Zian with a strange expression. Are you really a fool? I have already made a wish. The last wish. After a long silence, the Red Genie slowly sighed. It gently clapped its palms, and the dark and huge room in front of it was suddenly swept by bursts of reddish-brown light smoke. After that, the surroundings became bright. It was a very spacious and bright room. On the delicate bed, a pregnant woman was in pain at the moment, surrounded by a large number of servants. Outside the room, more people were waiting anxiously. Among them was a man with a dignified face. In front of Zhang Zian was a phantom created by the Red Genie's power, but it was so lifelike that it was like a real person. At this time, it slowly said in a low voice, "One day, the king of this country was anxiously waiting outside the queen's room because the prince of this country was about to be born." Hearing this, Boss Luo suddenly blinked his eyes curiously. This should be an ancient kingdom in a certain period. The child hasn't been born yet, but there was already technology to identify the baby's gender at that time. Don't interrupt. The Red Genie glared at him. I said it was a prince, so it was a prince. Luoqiu nodded obediently. The prince was born without a hitch. At this time, the Red Genie sorted out its thoughts and continued the story in the room. With the change of its voice, the surrounding scene began to flash like a merry-go-round. The prince was like a favorite child of God. On the day he was born, the whole country ushered in a harvest, an unprecedented harvest, so he was loved by the whole country. He was smart, strong, and strong. He was the pride of the kingdom. There was no doubt that he would take over the king's throne and become the new king. Everyone believes that under the leadership of the prince, this country will live a happier life. Even the king thinks so. Soon, the prince was 10 years old. He became stronger, and the teachers in the palace could no longer teach him anything. In order to let the prince learn more and become wiser, the king ordered to find a capable person to be the prince's teacher all over the country. Finally, one day, a powerful magus came before the king. The Red Genie paused for a long time, then took a deep breath and said in a cold voice, "The wizard had this incredible power. On the first day he met the king, he used his powerful strength to gain the king's approval and appointed the wizard to be the prince's new teacher. But the king would never have thought that the kingdom's destruction would begin at this moment." The Red Genie suddenly stopped. It was right in front of Boss Luo, clenching its fists hard. Its anger made its green roots covered its ferocious face. At the same time, its whole body was trembling, showing that it was not calm at this time. The realistic fantasy figures around it were also distorted. The Red Genie was like a volcano that was about to erupt. A powerful force leaked out of it, but soon, the magic lamp shot out a chain and restrained the Red Genie. It gradually calmed down, sighed, and suddenly looked at Boss Luo. "Do you really want to hear this story?" Chapter 15:15. Basically, there was no reason for him to stop halfway through a story. Besides, Boss Luo was the kind of person who liked to listen to stories. Furthermore, he had used his last wish. He is the most respected teacher of the prince's life. From him, not only did the prince learn more, but he also learned that there is a world that is far bigger than the kingdom. There are people of different skin colors, and there is a sea that is bigger than a lake. The prince wanted to see everything that his teacher said. He wanted to experience the greatness of this world together with his teacher. The Red Genie's expression softened. For this, the prince was even willing to give up his identity. He only wanted to follow his teacher and wander the world. Boss Luo gradually had a bad feeling. He hoped that it was just an illusion, but the reflections in the room gradually became philosophical. The prince and his teacher have climbed to unprecedented heights. They have crossed the vast sea. They have also lived with the locals in the extreme north and experienced the magic and magnificence of the aurora. All of this made the prince feel how small he used to be. Now that he has been reborn, he is overjoyed. He wanted to understand the true meaning of the world. He wanted to stay by his teacher's side forever and listen to his endless wisdom. These days lasted for 10 years. Finally, the prince and his teacher returned from their travels and returned to the prince's country. Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared in the room. It was like a dark cloud that covered the entire country. When the prince returned, what awaited him was not the sympathy of his family, nor the hugs of his parents, nor the cheers of his people who loved him. The Red Genie looked coldly at Boss Luo. What awaited the prince was this piece of ruins, just like this ruins. The dark clouds in the room dispersed, leaving only wreckage and the broken city walls. This was a shrunken and dilapidated country. The Red Genie reached out and grabbed a handful of dust. The dust scattered between its fingers. It stood silently like this. Because of the war? Luoqiu asked in a low voice. It was an invasion. The Red Genie said indifferently. A barbaric army from the south. They baptized the prince's country with the flames of war, hanged the king and queen, and used the cruelest method to kill the prince's people and destroy his home. Is the prince going to take revenge? Luoqiu still asked in a low voice. Of course the prince wants to take revenge. How could he not? The Red Genie's expression suddenly became fierce. The prince asked his teacher, a wizard with strong magic power, to help him. The wizard did not hesitate at all and told the prince the way to save everything. Do you know what the way is? The magic lamp. Luoqiu had a rough idea. That's right. The Red Genie of the Red Genie, the wizard told the prince that there was an irresistible great power in this world, but only the pure-hearted people could obtain it. It can make any wish come true. That was to obtain the legendary magical lamp. Finally, after countless hardships, the prince found the magic lamp. Unfortunately, the prince did not pass the test because there was only hatred in the prince's heart. The magic lamp will not respond to the evil man's request. The wizard appeared at this time. He told the prince that only by letting go of hatred and making his heart pure could he be recognized by the genie of the lamp. He asked the prince to give up the idea of killing the enemy. He said that time would punish the evil army. He said that instead of revenge, it was better to pray with the most sincere heart. He wished that the genie of the lamp would revive the prince's parents and people who died in the magic lamp. He wished that the kingdom that disappeared would come back again. Let everything go back to how it was before, and let the tragedy never happen again. Luoqiu was silent. The wizard's suggestion was more suitable than revenge. If the reward for letting go of hatred was to revive the dead, who wouldn't want to do that? Did the prince let go of hatred? Finally? Boss Luo asked curiously. He could only let go. The Red Genie of the lamp said calmly, without any hatred, his heart was as pure as water. Only then could he be recognized by the magic lamp. In order to make himself pure, the prince left the destroyed kingdom and traveled the world with the wizard again. He used the time to wash away the sadness in his heart. He used his longing for his family and friends to overcome his inner demons. The prince used a full 30 years to let go of the hatred in his heart and made himself purer. In the end, the prince was recognized by the magic lamp and successfully summoned the genie of the lamp. After a long period of practice, the prince finally succeeded in seeing his parents again. The prince used his first wish to revive the people who died in the war. Then, he used his second wish to restore the destroyed kingdom, allowing it to return to its former glory. Everything seemed to have gone back in time. The prince looked at his parents and relatives who were about the same age as him and couldn't help but cried bitterly. I really hope that the story ends here. Boss Luo slowly exhaled. The image in the room was the scene of the prince hugging his family. But obviously it's not like that, right? The Red Genie of the lamp took a deep breath. The prince has one last wish. What did you wish for? I wish to replace the original genie of the lamp and become the genie of the magic lamp. Boss Luo blinked. Suddenly, the boss said, Did your teacher tell you this? The red genie of the lamp looked at Luocchio in surprise, and finally nodded silently. His thoughts drifted. Many, many years ago. Teacher, look. The kingdom has been restored and the people can live a happy life again. These are the crops that have just been harvested. I asked someone to send some to you. How long do you think this happy life can last? As long as I am alive, I will make it last. I have one last wish. It can protect the kingdom, teacher. You and I will leave one day. The third wish will also be used up one day. The magic lamp will also change hands. You can't keep it forever. So, when the time comes, how can you protect this home? Teacher, please teach me. Only with great power can you protect your country under any circumstances and repel all invasions. Just like the invasion of that barbaric army in the past. As long as you have great power, you can protect your home and kingdom. I understand. Teacher, you want me to make a wish to the genie of the lamp so that it can give me great power to protect the kingdom. No, even if you have great power, it is only temporary. You will die one day. Then what should I do? The only way is for you to become the genie. I will become the genie? I'm just a mortal. Listen, there is nothing impossible in this world. Only when you become the genie can you stop all misfortune from happening in your kingdom. You have to understand that everyone only has 3 chances to make a wish. When you use up all your wishes, the genie will fall into the hands of the next qualified person. However, the magic lamp's recognition was a one-time thing. Once the holder's mind was no longer pure, or even corrupted by ambition, then the holder of the magic lamp would bring a terrible disaster to the world. You have seen the power of the genie. Can you imagine how scary it is when it is controlled by ambition? I can't. I really can't, teacher. So, only you. Only when you become the new genie will I have the confidence to. You were personally taught by me. No one knows your kindness better than I do. Only when you become the genie of the magic lamp will you truly care for those who are kind-hearted. Only you can truly use the power of the genie of the magic lamp to help those who are in need. You can even use the magic lamp as an heirloom of the royal family, allowing the descendants of the royal family to choose a pure-hearted descendant to summon you in times of crisis and solve the country's crisis. If this is passed down from generation to generation, this country will never decline. Never decline. But can I really do it? I'm just a mortal. Believe me, my most beloved student, you are the only one who has obtained the power of the magic lamp that I will not doubt. You are the only one who can truly utilize the power of the gods. What should I do? It's very simple. First, summon the genie and make your last wish. Wish? I am willing to take the place of the genie 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 of the genie. Teacher, you are much more knowledgeable than I am. Wouldn't it be better for you to control the power of the lamp? I can't do it. I still have an obsession in my heart that prevents me from gaining the acknowledgement of the divine lamp. In terms of cultivation, even as a teacher, I'm not as good as you. So, after you become the magic lamp, let me protect you well. My student, my one and only pride. I won't let you down, teacher. As you can see, this is how I became the genie, the red genie said calmly. The illusion in the room froze at the moment of the conversation between the wizard and the prince. Then, it gradually faded and finally disappeared. After that, Boss Luo obviously felt that the genie was cutting corners, but he was always a good person and only used a warning tone. The red genie frowned as if it was struggling in its heart. It suddenly roared angrily, "He lied to me! He lied to me! He lied to me! My most beloved teacher, the teacher that I would even sacrifice my life for, He lied to me. He made me the new genie just to release the old genie from the magic lamp. His lover. Everything he did, from the beginning, was for this purpose. The red genie's angry voice suddenly became shrill. He didn't tell me that after becoming the genie, I would have to endure the burning of the magic lamp all the time. He didn't tell me that I had to fulfill 1,000 wishes. He was the culprit that caused the destruction of my country in the first place. It was he who led the army to destroy my country. He lied to me. I want to kill him. You still have his lover, that bitch. This story was slightly different from the stories that it had heard before, and there were a lot of flaws. Boss Luo opened his mouth and then snapped his fingers. Suddenly, the coffee table and cups were ready. He poured a cup of tea for the red genie who had been telling the story until its mouth was dry. Oh, thank you. It took the cup subconsciously. Did I scare you? Sorry, my temper is getting worse after staying in the magic lamp for so long. But I feel much better after telling you. Hey, you're actually a good person. You're welcome. Boss Luo smiled. Seeing that the red lamp god was getting closer, he stepped back a little without a trace. Just like that, they looked at each other. The red genie suddenly whispered, "You. After knowing this, will you look down on me?" Boss Luo, who had become quite eloquent since he became the shop owner, was now at a loss for words when he looked at the red genie's eyes. He rubbed his eyebrows and chose his words carefully. So you'd rather use your soul as collateral than lose half of your power, so that you can take revenge when you regain your freedom in the future. Half of my power is not enough to deal with my old wizard. The red genie gritted its teeth and said, "He is a powerful wizard. And that bitch, she had been a genie for many years before me, so there must be a lot of things that I don't know about. Not to mention that I only have half of my power left. Even if I leave the magic lamp's imprisonment now, I can't guarantee that I can defeat that bitch." Luochio sorted out his thoughts and listened to the red genie calling her bitch. Strictly speaking, as the lover of his teacher, the previous genie was actually the red genie's master's wife. After some simple sorting, the story of the red genie was actually a story of my most respected teacher teamed up with his coquettish teacher's wife to set me up, and I couldn't beat them. I was also in despair. What should I do? Anxious. It was a story. So many years have passed. As a genie you can live forever, but your teacher and the previous genie may not live that long. Boss Luo shook his head. The red genie also shook its head. No, I believe that the wizard can, because he will drink the spring water of the fountain of youth. So will that bitch. Boss Luo blinked. The fountain of youth? The red genie nodded. That's a treasure I accidentally found when I was looking for the magic lamp. I even told him, my teacher, Boss Luo really believed that the red genie was telling the truth. Chapter 15-16. Do you want another cup? No, thank you. This cup is enough. I haven't had such good tea in a long time. The red lamp god held the teacup with both hands and sat on the stairs where the lamp was placed. Boss Luo also picked up the teacup and sat next to her. But he looked at the entrance. The woman outside, is she your friend? The red genie suddenly lowered its voice and asked. Luochio thought for a while and said, currently we're classmates. We just got to know each other not long ago, so we're not friends. Due to some reasons we came to the desert. We were accidentally involved in an incident, so we ended up here. The red genie nodded. Maybe it was because it had vented its anger for years. It didn't look so ferocious anymore. It even looked kind. It looked at Boss Luo and said in an experienced tone, "It's good that you don't have too much to do with each other. I can tell you that women are the scariest creatures in the world, and the most unwanted. They will not only hurt you but also rob you of everything. Especially beautiful women, they are as vicious as snakes and scorpions. That bitch." Crack. Due to the excessive force, the cup shattered in the red genie's hand. However, the genie did not seem to notice the broken cup. Its eyes were fixed on the passage in front of the entrance. Gradually, a cruel glint appeared in its eyes. Soon, it sighed. Although she is a woman, there is no doubt that I hope she can pass this test. Otherwise, I don't know how long I will have to wait for the next time. After Luaccio made the third wish, the magic lamp replied that it needed to wait for the next qualified person to appear. Claudia would be the next candidate according to the situation of the curtain wall. But obviously, the possibility of her passing was quite low. Even if she can pass this test with her willpower, she may not be recognized by the magic lamp. After all, this test was built by the last person who summoned me. It's still not as good as the magic lamp's recognition ability, but if she can pass the test, the possibility of being recognized by the magic lamp will be higher. The red genie sighed again and said faintly, I don't know when the next person will summon me. You, if you're not in a hurry to leave, can you stay and chat with me? Of course. Boss Luo nodded and moved away slightly. He smiled and said, I also want to know more about the Fountain of Youth, if you are willing. The red genie said casually, It's called the Fountain of Youth, but it's actually not a divine item. Strictly speaking, it's an extremely evil thing. The red genie sank into its memories and said slowly, At that time I was frantically searching for the magic lamp. I went through many tests, and the place where the Fountain of Youth was located was one of them. The place where it was located was guarded by powerful monsters. In front of those monsters, even the strongest human warrior would be easily torn to pieces. When you defeat these monsters and finally arrive in front of the Fountain of Youth, what awaits you is a test of humanity. Is there a problem with the Fountain of Youth? The red lamp god nodded. It's not as beautiful as you think. If you want to regain your youth through it, you have to make a sacrifice. You have to throw the sacrifice into the spring water, and then drink the spring water to regain your youth. To put it bluntly, it's equivalent to depriving a person of their time and transferring it to another person. If you want to maintain your youth, you have to keep feeding it young lives. Moreover, it's not like you can just throw anyone into the spring water and it'll succeed. Those who walk into the spring water must be willing to sacrifice themselves. A life for a life, Luaccio couldn't help but lower his head and ponder. The red genie didn't seem to notice Boss Luo's subtle expression. This Fountain of Youth is too evil. At that time, I even wanted to destroy it. But everything has a spirit. Since this spring water exists, perhaps it exists for a reason. I shouldn't break the laws of nature, so in the end, I didn't destroy it. I just sealed it up. It said bitterly. Now that I think about it, I really should have destroyed it back then. I shouldn't have told that wizard. When he could live with that bitch. The wizard must have a way to make people willingly walk into the spring water. Just like how he did to me. Hey, why are you walking over there? There's no place to sit. I want to see this mural. Boss Luo said indifferently, I'm quite interested in history. This mural is a good opportunity to learn about history. Oh, I see. Then take a look. The red genie nodded and then said enthusiastically, You can ask me if you don't understand. It's okay. I just want to find someone to talk to. After all these years, it's rare to find someone willing to listen to me. By the way, do you have a woman you love deeply? Let me tell you, women are. Claudia still can't get over it? In the illusion, there were things that people wanted but couldn't get. It was something that could make people willingly fall into it, something called desire. Claudia, what do you want to be when you grow up? In the courtyard, Professor Siegetu held the little Claudia and asked softly. The little Claudia looked at the blue sky and thought seriously. Not long after, she had an answer. I want to be like Dad and explore all over the world. That's not called exploration. Professor Siegetu laughed. That's part of Dad's job. It's to study the origin of ancient gods. There are many dangerous things in exploration. But Dad's job is very safe most of the time. Then, the little Claudia didn't understand these things. Biting her little finger, she thought for a while and said firmly, "Then I want to be like Dad and do research." "If that's the case, then Claudia will have to study hard." Professor Siegetu lifted her up. The surroundings suddenly turned into a sea of flowers. It was like a dream. In the tunnel it was cold. There was no huge wealth or sea of flowers. Claudia curled up under the wall and suddenly woke up. She subconsciously touched her cheek and found something even colder. It seemed to be water. She raised her head. Above her head, there were droplets of water dripping down from the passageway, landing on her cheek. Claudia took a deep breath and patted her cheeks to wake herself up. She seemed to have fallen into an illusion, but she couldn't say why she fell into this illusion. But she remembered that she followed Luacio's footsteps, and then got separated. Claudia quickly stood up. There was only one straight path in this tunnel. She could only follow the tunnel and walk forward. Not believing in ghosts and gods was the basic culture of a person who believed in science. She was determined to become a mathematician, so she wouldn't be frightened by this. No way. But not long after she was frightened, she saw light in front of her. Claudia quickly ran to the light source. The exit. In front of her, there was a huge room with lights all around. In the center, there were two huge statues like guards. On the table in the middle, there was an ordinary-looking oil lamp. Claudia was stunned at first, then she saw Luacio. Luacio was standing in front of a corner of the wall, looking at the murals on the wall. "Luo?" Claudia tried to ask cautiously. "You?" Boss Luo turned around and glanced at Claudia. Then, he smiled. "Did you encounter anything special on the way? You waited for a long time?" Claudia frowned. She couldn't remember much about what happened in the passageway. She only remembered that she seemed to have fallen asleep while walking. "Not long." Boss Luo shook his head and said, "It was even faster than I thought." Claudia was confused. Then, she pointed at the oil lamp on the table. "This? Where is this place? That thing?" "It seems to be the thing that the corpses outside the tunnel want to get," Boss Luo said casually. "An oil lamp. Maybe it's a magic lamp. Then you wipe it a few times and a fat blue lamp god will come out to fulfill your 3 wishes, right?" Claudia rolled her eyes. "I know the story of Aladdin. Do you want to try?" Boss Luo suggested. Claudia shook her head and looked around carefully. "Can you have some common sense? The thing is placed in such an obvious place. If you randomly pick it up, you might trigger the mechanism." Luacio smiled. "Claudia, you know a lot." Claudia said, "Father often goes out to explore newly unearthed ruins. Although I'm not interested, I know a lot. I know a few things. For example, this oil lamp on the table. It's very likely that there's an ancient gravity device installed on it. When the oil lamp is picked up, the gravity will be unbalanced, and the mechanism here will be activated. Don't think that the ancient people's things look simple. Most of the time, their exploration of reason is not worse than modern people. They just lack generalization and generalization. I'm glad that Claudia agrees with the ancient people's wisdom." Luacio chuckled. Then, under Claudia's shocked gaze, he directly lifted the lamp on the table. Do you want to die? But it's a pity that there doesn't seem to be the mechanism you mentioned." Luacio came to Claudia with the lamp. "Now, do you want to wipe it?" Claudia opened her mouth, hesitated for a moment, and then took the lamp. She hesitated for a moment, then turned around and used her sleeve to rub the surface of the lamp a few times with a look of disgust. Luacio smiled. Probably everyone would have such a thing. When the miraculous scene that they had imagined when they were young appeared in front of them, they would always do something that seemed quite childish when they grew up. But the magic lamp didn't have any reaction. A magic lamp that didn't have any reaction was just the most ordinary lamp. "See, there's nothing." Claudia turned around, picked up the lamp, and shook her head. "Legends are legends after all, only used to deceive children. Idiot." Luacio smiled and looked around. "This is the end, there's no road. It seems that we can only go back." "Then let's go." Claudia nodded and said, "It's still dangerous here, it's better to leave early." Then, Claudia casually stuffed the lamp in her hand into the backpack. Facing Luacio's gaze, she explained, "It's rare to come to this place, but I only found this thing. I don't know if it's good or not. Maybe it's something valuable. Even if it's just an ordinary item, it's not bad as a souvenir." Claudia's words were very reasonable, and Boss Luo couldn't find any reason to refute it. Looking at the magic lamp being stuffed into the backpack, Boss Luo seemed to hear the roar of the red lamp god living inside. It seemed to say, "See. I told you. Women are not good things. Not good things. I told you." When they were about to walk out of the passage, Claudia suddenly asked, "By the way, Luo, did you encounter anything special when you were in the passage? For example, did you have a very long dream?" "No." Boss Luo shook his head and said indifferently, "How about you, did you?" "I forgot." Claudia shrugged and then stretched, "But I did fall asleep." Sleeping on the floor is not good for the body. Dash. She suddenly let out a cry of surprise. It turned out that a strong light suddenly shot in from the exit. The sudden strong light made them unable to open their eyes. After their eyes adjusted to the light, they saw more than 10 men with weapons standing in the room in front of the passage. Those were the thugs who chased Arya in the desert. Clap, clap, clap. Continuous applause sounded. In the middle of the thugs, a man in his 40s slowly walked out. He seemed to be the leader of this group of thugs. He was wearing a combat suit, but the combat suit was on top of a long-sleeved white robe, which looked a bit out of place. "You don't come here." Claudia stepped back in fright, but she didn't know why. She remembered what she said before, so she braced herself and walked forward. Her hand trembled as she raised the pistol she found on the corpse. "Give up resisting." The leader shook his head. "Give me the things you got from inside. I can let you leave this place safely. Otherwise, you'll end up like the corpses on the ground." Bang! Just as the man finished speaking, a loud sound rang out. With a flash of fire, the man felt a burning sensation on his temples. It was a bullet. The bullet grazed the hair of the leader, and the shooter was Claudia. Claudia's hands trembled even more at this moment. She even wanted to cry. She didn't want to shoot, and she didn't want to fight with more than 10 rifles, but she had no other choice. Because she was too nervous, the pistol went off by accident. The man was furious. Kill them. Chapter 15-17. If someone were to ask Claudia if she could kill more than a dozen enemies armed with submachine guns with a small handgun, she would reply without hesitation that it was absolutely impossible until the thugs in front of her fell one after another in front of her. Bang, 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 bang. The last one to fall was the leader of the thugs. His eyes were ferocious and he couldn't believe it. Claudia's whole body trembled slightly. Perhaps because she was too scared, Claudia still maintained the posture of pointing the gun at Luacio, but she didn't seem to notice it. Instead, she swallowed her saliva and said with a trembling voice, They are all dead. But I didn't shoot?" She really didn't shoot. Oh, except for the first shot that went off accidentally. The gunshots that suddenly sounded were not from the small pistol in her hand. All of this happened as fast as lightning. "I know." Luacio reached out and pressed down the pistol in Claudia's hand. "It wasn't you." Then, Claudia was startled. Then she thought of something and instantly looked behind the thugs. At this time, she saw 2 figures slowly walking out from the shadows. Claudia fixed her eyes and found that the 2 people were Arya and the mysterious Mr. Otto. They also had guns in their hands. The ones who shot all the thugs were them who were hiding in the shadows. Didn't you leave already? Why did you come back?" Claudia looked at Arya and suddenly frowned and asked, "Who asked me to be a man of my word?" Arya said indifferently, "Since I took Otto's money to bring him into the desert, I naturally have to bring him out of the desert safely. I just went outside to look for some equipment. How can I just leave like this?" Claudia didn't believe him at all. She was still holding a grudge against him for scaring her with something as terrifying as a corpse prostitute. However, she was still grateful for Otto's help. "Thank you for saving us, Mr. Otto. This is only a small part of them. Their people might catch up soon. Let's leave this place first." Otto looked around and then turned around. "Follow me." Under Ao2O's lead, everyone quickly left the underground pyramid. They didn't encounter any accidents along the way, and there were no traps at all. Along the way, one could see traces of blood on the walls from time to time. Arya said that this group of thugs had been excavating this place for many years. Most of the traps in the pyramid had been directly removed by them. Even if they walked with their eyes closed, they would not encounter any danger. As for how the thugs removed the traps inside the pyramid, looking at the bloodstains on the walls, it was easy to guess. Don't forget, these thugs would also capture travelers who were alone. Later, in order to prove that there really wasn't much danger here, Arya dared to take a few steps with his eyes closed. Then, he slipped and fell to the ground. Claudia held back her laughter. "I'm finally out." The exit was a sand dune, and there was a stone passage leading to the surface. It was already night outside, and the temperature difference between day and night was huge. Claudia couldn't help but shiver as soon as she came out. At this time, Otto skillfully ran to the other side of the sand dune. After digging out the sand, they saw a large piece of canvas. This place was originally blocked by a canvas, and under the canvas, there was a small stable. Camels! Claudia couldn't help but be surprised. At this time, Arya snorted and said, "I secretly got these 2 camels. In order to place them here, I escaped several times before I got them." Claudia couldn't help but ask curiously, "You escaped so many times, how did you get caught again?" Arya stared and said, "What do you know? This place is very remote. If there aren't enough resources, I will die of thirst before I can run out. Do you think that escaping from this camp will be safe? Wrong, this desert itself is a big prison. We dug out the thugs' camp, and this is just the first step of escaping." Claudia stuck out her tongue. This was all knowledge that she didn't learn from books. Although she didn't like Arya, she secretly admired his life experience. At this time, Claudia thought of something and subconsciously looked at Mr. Otto. She asked curiously, "Mr. Otto, didn't you say that you will stay to protect the cultural relics in this pyramid?" "Why," Otto said calmly, "this is just an excuse. I need to stay to prevent Arya from escaping. After I get caught, I can still say a few words to the thugs. Otherwise, this guy would have died long ago. Now that everything is ready, I naturally don't need to stay. I can't protect the cultural relics here alone. The best way is of course to leave this place, and then ask the local government to come forward and clean up this group of robbers." "No matter what, Mr. Otto saved us." Boss Luo suddenly interrupted, "What are your plans now?" "It's not our plans but your plans." Arya walked forward and said directly, "We will definitely escape from here, but you? What do you want?" Claudia frowned. She had a bad feeling. Arya smiled brightly and said, "Look, this camel, I escaped time and time again to set it up. The resources here were also collected by me bit by bit. We have already saved your lives down there. Now you want me to provide you with camels and resources for free and bring you out of the desert?" "I know." Claudia snorted coldly. "After leaving the desert, I will pay. I will pay for both of you, okay?" "Words are no guarantee." Arya shook his head. "What if you sneak away after leaving the desert? Who can I cry to? There is nothing here. Even if you want me to pay, at least give me a cell phone?" Claudia said angrily. Arya threw her into the stable without saying anything. Not long after, he came out with a suitcase. This was the suitcase that Claudia was caught and taken away by the thugs. "Come, this is your cell phone. So you are all prepared." Claudia opened her mouth. She felt like someone was holding a knife to her neck and asking if she wanted to buy something. She glared at Arya and snatched her cell phone from Arya's hand. Then she said coldly, "Say it. How much is it for 2 people?" $1 million. Arya laughed and said, "How is it? $1 million for a chance to get out. It's worth it, right? White-skinned little girl." "What? 1 million?" Claudia suddenly exclaimed. Arya stretched out 2 fingers and pointed the gun in his hand. He sneered and said, "It's 1 million per person, 2 million in total. Thank you for your cooperation." "You are clearly robbing," Claudia said angrily. "Where would I get so much money? I don't even have that much money in my entire family." Arya shrugged and said, "I don't care. I only want money. Either you give it to me or I will take the resources and leave. I don't care if you live or die." "Arya, that's enough." Mr. Ao frowned. Arya laughed and suddenly swept the gun in his hand. Mr. Ao's gun fell to the ground. While Mr. Ao was surprised, Arya had already pointed the gun at Mr. Ao's chest. "Mr. Ao, you too, please give me 1 million as well." "Thank you." "You." Mr. Ao frowned even harder. Arya said calmly, "Mister, you know that my biggest wish is to be a rich man. Now I have this chance. I know that if I don't grab it, I will probably only be a desert guide for the rest of my life. When I am lucky, I can at most earn some tips, but when I am unlucky, I will probably die in the desert. I just want to live a comfortable life, so don't force me to do it. Mr. Ao, you are a smart person. A smart person should know what to do at this time, right?" Mr. Ao sighed slowly, then nodded. "But I don't have that much money on hand. But I can tell you a chance to get rich. You will get more wealth than this travel fee." "Mr. Ao, I am just a small person. I don't have the ambition to find treasure." Arya shook his head. "I know my ability very well. I only need a little money to live a comfortable life. This chance to get rich, you should keep it for yourself. Now, just give me the travel fee." Mr. Ao looked at Arya silently, then took the phone he handed over. "Now it's your turn, white-skinned girl." Arya smiled with satisfaction, then looked at Claudia and Boss Luo again. "I don't have that much. Even if you kill me here, I can't give you 2 million. Claudia shook her head with a sense of despair. Arya didn't care. He pointed the gun at Luochio. His meaning was very clear. Since the girl didn't have it, then the guy would do it. It didn't matter who gave it, as long as he had the money, everything was negotiable. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "Mr. Arya, if we don't give you the money, you will take all the supplies and camels and leave us behind, right?" Arya shrugged and said, "I will leave you with a pack of biscuits and half a bottle of water. How is it? Am I merciful enough?" "Thank you." Boss Luo nodded and said calmly, "Then we only need a pack of biscuits and half a bottle of water." Claudia was dumbfounded. Shouldn't this new classmate be a rich kid from an eastern country? Arya was also dumbfounded. How could someone not want to live? "You don't want to live?" Arya frowned. "How long can you last with a pack of biscuits and half a bottle of water? In the desert, you will collapse in less than half a day. I am not kidding. Thank you for your reminder, Mr. Arya." Boss Luo still insisted, "But we really only need a pack of biscuits and half a bottle of water." Arya opened his mouth and pondered for a while. He gritted his teeth and said, "If you can't take out 1 million, then 800,000 will do." Boss Luo still shook his head. What a joke, when did he bring money with him? He had been using Miss Maid's money all this while. As for other situations, if he wanted to make money out of it, that would be fatal. This boss who loved to go shopping in the supermarket when it was on sale, how could he use his own time to exchange for money? 700,000. At least 700,000. 700,000 per person. Boss Luo still shook his head and insisted that half a bottle of water and a pack of biscuits would be enough. Arya had never seen such a stingy guy who only wanted to take in and not take out. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. However, he didn't want to kill him. He only wanted money. If he killed him, he wouldn't get anything. 500,000. I will give you one last chance. 500,000 per person. Any less, and you will stay here to feed the scorpions in the desert. Boss Luo still shook his head and said that if the other party could give him an extra box of matches in addition to half a bottle of water and a pack of biscuits, he would be very grateful. Do you believe that I will kill you now? Arya said fiercely with red eyes. Boss Luo said calmly, the gunshots will probably alert the thugs at the camp. Maybe the camel can outrun their off-road vehicles. You piss me off. Arya grabbed his head and shook it a few times. I have never seen such a stingy guy like you. Fine. If you want to stay here and wait for death, then do as you please. With that said, Arya pulled the camel over and jumped on it, bringing the supplies with him. At the same time, he shouted to Mr. Otto, "Are you following me? I took your money, so I won't go back on my word. If you can't keep up with my speed, don't blame me." Mr. Otto looked at Boss Luo and seemed to be thinking about something. Arya, I will give you their money, what do you think? You are so generous, respected Mr. Otto. Arya turned around and got off the camel. He bowed and said, Your most loyal servant is at your service, sir. Mr. Otto shook his head and took out his phone again to transfer the travel expenses to Arya. He then looked at Boss Luo and Claudia. If you have anything to say it after we leave this place. Claudia didn't say anything. She just quietly organized her luggage. Her things were obviously rummaged through by the thugs, as the inside of her luggage was a mess. She slightly distanced herself from Luocio. She seemed to have some thoughts about Luocio's unwillingness to pay in the end. However, Boss Luo didn't care about this because he heard a soft voice. It was the voice of the Red Genie in the magic lamp. The Red Genie told Luocio that Otto was the last person who summoned the Genie of the Genie and fulfilled 3 wishes. Chapter 15:18. The previous summoner of the magic lamp, with 3 wishes, built a kingdom overnight and gained immortality. But even so, he could not resurrect his deceased lover, because his 3 wishes had been used up. In order to resurrect the queen, the previous summoner secretly built an underground pyramid, and at the same time, brutally captured people to pass the test, hoping to find the next summoner with a pure heart to help him fulfill his wish of resurrecting the queen. This might be the reason why the 7th dynasty collapsed so quickly. The king kept killing people for the 4th wish, and after a long time, the people would probably rebel. In fact, the so-called kingdom in that era was not that big. Instead of calling it a kingdom, it was more like a modern city-state. Since it could be built overnight in the desert, it could also be destroyed overnight. So, if Otto was the previous summoner, then he probably knew about the underground pyramid, and even knew the location of the magic lamp. In fact, the desert at night was not suitable for traveling, but they had just escaped from the thugs' camp, so it was naturally not suitable for them to wander around the exit. Although Arya had completely fallen out with the group on the issue of collecting travel fees, the principle of doing things after receiving payment was still acceptable. Although it was quite unpleasant as a desert guide, his professional knowledge did come in handy. After riding the camel for a long distance, Arya found a few empty houses in the desert that were built with mud and stone. It's too cold now and the vision is not good. It's easy to turn back. Let's rest here and continue our journey until dawn. No objections. Arya began to live, and then he distributed drinking water and food to everyone. After that, he carried all the supplies, took the camel, and hid in the house next to it. What a paranoid guy! Claudia said with hatred, but she also knew that since their relationship had become so tense, Arya's actions at this time were understandable. To be honest, if she was in Arya's shoes, she would probably do the same thing. Claudia took half a bottle of water and a bag of dry food, and hid in the corner of the house, eating silently. Since they started their journey, Claudia did not take the initiative to talk to Boss Luo again. At this moment, something suddenly flashed out of the room, causing Claudia to jump up in fright. It was a light yellow lizard with a hint of stone gray. Most women were a little afraid of this kind of reptile. Just as Claudia screamed, Mr. Otto suddenly swung his hand, and a cold light flashed. It was a small dagger. Just like a clown in a circus performing throwing knives, the shiny dagger directly pierced the lizard's head and nailed it to the ground. Dead. Mr. Otto walked over, stepped on the lizard's body, and pulled out the dagger and said calmly, "This is the king lizard, a lizard species unique to this place. But this lizard, it is not very dangerous. Scared me to death." Claudia heaved a sigh of relief before glancing at Mr. Otto. She suddenly felt that this man with a face full of vicissitudes seemed to be rather reliable. At the very least, he was much better than a certain gigolo from the East. "I often walk in the desert, so I encountered it. It's not a big deal." Mr. Otto shook his head slightly. Claudia said, "I didn't expect your throwing knives to be so powerful. Normal people can't do it." Mr. Otto said calmly, "It's just that I have a lot of practice. Practice makes perfect. You can do it too, as long as you are willing to spend more time." Claudia shook her head. If she had the time, she would rather solve a few more math problems. Of course, the premise was that she could safely leave the desert and return to civilized society. "Mr. Otto, where are you from?" Unknowingly, Claudia approached Mr. Otto and began to curiously ask some questions. She seemed to have forgotten that inside the house, Boss Luo was still tidying up the fire. Boss Luo was using normal methods to make the fire more vigorous. He had learned some wilderness survival knowledge before. When he was a child, his father took him to a certain army camp to learn. However, this knowledge was generally not useful. "This fire is just right," Mr. Otto suddenly said. "It's just right for barbecuing." Where did the meat come from? The only source of meat was naturally the king lizard that was just stabbed to death on the ground. The meat of the king lizard was edible. It had been eaten by a certain man who claimed to be the strongest on the surface in public, and it was eaten raw. Mr. Otto used the dagger to peel off the skin of the king lizard, then cut out the meat, skewered it on the dry branches, and began to barbecue it. Its protein content is higher than these dry foods. We need to replenish more energy, Mr. Otto said while barbecuing the lizard meat. Claudia probably couldn't accept this kind of meat. At this time, she looked at it with suspicion. However, probably because Otto gave her a sense of reliability along the way, when the lizard meat was sent over, she forced herself to eat it. There was no seasoning, and the meat couldn't be softened. It was just barbecued, so the taste was naturally not good. However, in this difficult and dangerous environment, there was a special fragrance of oil as she ate. Boss Luo also took a small bite and nodded. "The control of the fire is really good. Mr. Otto also likes to cook?" "When I'm bored, I always need to find something to pass the time," Mr. Otto said calmly. Boss Luo said, "Mr. Otto, you often go around the world to inspect cultural relics. Do you also feel bored?" "I need to rest." Claudia looked at Boss Luo and rolled her eyes. "Who goes around the world every day? You always need to have time to rest. Isn't it normal to find something to do and relax during rest?" "That's true." Boss Luo smiled and then stood up. "I'll go outside and pick up some dry branches." "Up to you." Claudia shrugged casually. Mr. Otto didn't say much. He only said that the weather outside was cold. He threw a coat to Boss Luo and asked him to wear it. He was afraid that Boss Luo would be in danger, so he gave him the dagger to defend himself. "You don't have to be so nice to this guy." Claudia shook her head and said in a low voice, after Boss Luo went out, "Did you quarrel?" Mr. Otto smiled and said, "Why?" Claudia said calmly, "I don't like to be with selfish people. I'm not familiar with him to begin with." Mr. Otto naturally knew that Luocio insisted on not giving money when Arya made things difficult for him. He looked at Claudia and said, "Not familiar? If you're not familiar with him, why did you come to the desert with him? Because of some other reasons. Claudia shook her head and sighed. Now that I think about it, am I crazy? I only know him for a few days and I actually followed him to such a godforsaken place. I must have been possessed. Maybe he insisted on not giving Arya travel expenses for some other reason. Mr. Otto thought for a while and said, "What reason?" Claudia muttered unhappily. "Maybe. Even without Arya's resources and guidance, he still has a way to bring you out of the desert." Mr. Otto suddenly said, "His stamina is very good, and he seems to know how to survive in the wild." "This guy has good stamina? Such a weak person?" Claudia said in disbelief. "Looks like a young master who is used to being served. And stingy. You need to observe more in life." Mr. Otto shook his head. "Your eyes will deceive your first perception. Some people, some things you can only know their nature after getting along with them for a long time." Claudia didn't agree and shook her head. "Maybe. When young people grow up, they will become more mature. Experience will also teach them a lot of things, but that will be many years later. But the maturity after many years won't be able to solve the current problem. It's not a bad thing to give some patience." Mr. Otto smiled slightly. Claudia snorted softly and said, "If a woman gives a man patience, who will give a woman time? A woman's body, youth, and appearance are all ready-made. Don't men always like ready-made?" "Most of them do." Mr. Otto didn't deny it and said in a low voice, "Give a woman time. But even if you give a woman time, the seemingly eternal companionship will still come to an end." This wasn't the topic to be discussed at the beginning. Claudia was startled and felt that she was being led astray. She couldn't help but shake her head. "Why are you thinking so much? After a few decades, you and I will be the same, turned into ashes." "That's right. We will still face death in the end." Mr. Otto nodded. "No one is an exception." Claudia rubbed her forehead. Probably because of the fear and the many experiences she had today, she was mentally tired. She yawned and said, "This topic is obviously not suitable to continue in this environment. Let's rest more and replenish our strength. Your friend hasn't come back yet. I will wait for him." Mr. Otto smiled. "If you are tired, you can sleep first. I will watch the fire." Before Claudia fell asleep, she seemed to have thought of something. After hesitating for a while, she took out the strange oil lamp she got from the pyramid from her backpack. "This is?" Mr. Otto was slightly startled. Claudia said casually, "I found this in the pyramid. Those thugs seem to want this thing. It is probably very valuable. I can't let you pay for my travel expenses for free, but I don't have so much money to pay you back. Take this thing as a gift." Mr. Otto didn't refuse and took it silently. Claudia said at this time, "I have to say in advance, I don't know if this thing is very valuable. It may be just a piece of junk, worthless. But it may also be a precious cultural relic, a priceless treasure. I will give it to you. No matter whether it is valuable or not, I owe you 1,000,000 yuan. As for that guy's travel expenses, if you want it, you can take it from him." "Don't you regret it?" Mr. Aotoa suddenly asked. "Perhaps it is really valuable, or even a priceless treasure. After all, so many people have died for it. Furthermore, I did not say that you have to pay me back. You can pretend to be silent and wait until we leave the desert. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. Claudia frowned. "I'm not used to owing others. As I said, even if this thing is priceless, both of us can't regret it after tonight. Many people have died for this thing, so it's obviously not a good thing. It might even bring misfortune. Besides, there are probably a lot of souvenir shops in the city for this thing. Could it be that you can really call out a fat blue elf to give you 3 wishes?" Mr. Otto said indifferently, "Maybe you can." Claudia shook her head. "You can take it seriously. Anyway, I have held it for so long. Let alone an elf, even a mosquito didn't fly out. As long as you are happy." Mr. Otto was silent for a while. He kept looking at the oil lamp in his hand. No one knew what he was thinking. In his silence, Claudia fell asleep because she was too tired. She woke up because she heard some movement. She was a person who woke up very easily. The sound came from the crackling of burning twigs. Claudia opened her eyes and saw Lucio sitting in front of the fire adding twigs. But she didn't see Mr. Otto. She couldn't help but frown. It was the first time she spoke to Boss Luo since the exit. "Where is Mr. Otto?" "Not here," Lucio said casually. "When I came back, he was already gone." "Not here? Did he go to the bathroom?" Claudia frowned and immediately asked, "How long have you been back?" "More than half an hour." Lucio looked at the time. "I saw you fell asleep, so I didn't wake you up." "More than half an hour?" Claudia hurriedly sat up and looked at the place where Mr. Otto had been. There was nothing left except for the unfinished lizard meat skewered on a few dried twigs. "He can't be gone for so long for no reason, right?" Claudia looked at Lucio vigilantly, then quickly got up and ran out. Boss Luo didn't care. After breaking a twig and throwing it into the fire, he took out a book and started to read Grimm's fairy tales. This was actually Grimm's Fairy Tales by Teacher Poulin, but Boss Luo borrowed it from Teacher Poulin, and Teacher Poulin gave it to him without any hesitation. Not long after, Claudia hurried back with a slightly panicked expression. "Arya is also gone. Camels, water and food, all are gone. He left us. But Mr. Otto. But Mr. Otto was also gone." Suddenly, Claudia thought of two possibilities. First, Lucio killed Mr. Otto and Arya when she was asleep and hid the water and supplies. But obviously, he had no motive to do so. Then the second possibility. Otto and Arya left together and took away all the water and food. But why did they do that? Exactly what happened? Claudia sat down weakly, only feeling a huge sense of fear. Even though there was a burning fire in front of her, she still felt cold. "What time is it now? You still have the mood to read." Where did you get the book?" Ignoring Claudia's last question, Boss Luo closed the fairy tale book and said indifferently, "Then, Claudia, what do you think we should do next?" "Of course we should catch up with them." Claudia was slightly angry. "How can you be like this? Since you came back long ago and found that Otto was gone, don't you have any thoughts? Have you ever been away from home before?" As she spoke, Claudia walked out directly, but it was dark outside, and there was no road in the desert. Who knew which direction Arya and Mr. Otto went? "Or let's go this way." Boss Luo picked up a torch and pointed at the stars in the sky. North Star. Chapter 15:19. Going back seemed to be a dead end. The thugs would definitely not let her go so easily, so compared to the torture she would face if she went back, Claudia was more willing to go into the unknown desert. "Why don't you look nervous at all?" Claudia could not help but frown. She felt that her brain was in a mess. She couldn't remember how she came to this desert. Logically speaking, there must be a journey in the process, but this memory was blurry. It seemed like she had experienced it, but also seemed like she had not experienced it. This made her feel vaguely uneasy. Traveling in the cold desert at night magnified this uneasiness infinitely. Perhaps she should not have left the broken house. But if she waited until dawn, the thugs might catch up with her again. "Maybe it's because my luck has always been good," Boss Luo said casually. "There is a saying in our world, there is always a way out." Claudia rolled her eyes. She really did not know where this guy's confidence came from. She shook her head and suddenly asked, "You said, I can understand why Arya suddenly left. He is familiar with the terrain, so it is more convenient for him to travel alone. But why did Mr. Otto leave too? Didn't they not have a good relationship before? And Mr. Otto even paid for me and you." Lucio thought about it and said, "Did you see Mr. Otto pay for you and me with your own eyes?" Claudia frowned and said, "Did he not?" At that time, Mr. Otto had already transferred the money to Arya, so he agreed to bring you and me. Mobile phone. Wait. Come to think of it, she really did not see the transfer of money with her own eyes. That was done on the mobile phone. At most, she only saw Otto using the mobile phone, and only heard Arya saying that the money had been transferred. She really did not see the money in person. Mr. Otto did not transfer the money at all? Claudia was shocked. He and Arya are actually acting? But why would he do that? What do you think? Lucio asked casually. Claudia lowered her head and muttered, in this case, it could be that the two of them are working together to get money from you and me, from us, using a very simple herd mentality. At the beginning, Otto gave us the money without hesitation, but he didn't actually give us the money at all. He was just putting on an act to make us give him the money obediently. But later, I could not give it at all, and you were determined not to give it, so Otto had to change the original plan. What plan? Claudia looked as if she had expected better from him. You still don't understand? Of course, it was to create a good image in front of us. The money was not given, but he made it seem like he had already paid it for us. This way we will be the one who owes them 2 million. After we leave the desert, they will definitely think of other ways to make us cough up the money. Why don't you understand it? Boss Luo smiled and said, but in fact, they did not get the money and left quietly. This, maybe, Claudia subconsciously said, maybe they felt that they could not get any money from us, and they were afraid that the thugs would catch up with us, so they simply left like this? After all, their lives are more important? Or maybe they have already achieved their original goal. Goal? Claudia was puzzled. What goal? They did not get a penny from us at all. I did not even give them an IOU or anything like that, except for a broken oil lamp. You mean the oil lamp? You gave the oil lamp to Otto, right? Claudia said helplessly. I did give it to him. I'm not used to owing people things. I thought that if this lamp was something valuable, giving it to him would be a way to repay him. After all, he did save us from the ruffians. If not for him, we would have probably been shot dead by the thugs outside the secret room. But I don't understand. If it was just for the oil lamp, why would he do so many things and even conspire with Arya to put on an act? Wouldn't it be more efficient to ask directly or even threaten directly? Yes, it would be more efficient to ask directly. Luochu followed Claudia's train of thought and said, after all, they had the upper hand at that time and could have made us hand over the oil lamp. But why did he do that? Or he was worried about something. Claudia thought for a while and finally shook her head. But I really don't understand. What was he worried about? He couldn't be worried that the oil lamp in my hand could really summon the fat blue elf. He was afraid that I would use a wish to save myself, so he helped to save us, right? Student Claudia, you are really smart. Boss Luo praised. Claudia rolled her eyes again and said rather irritably, now I know why you came to the Academy of Theology. You are probably a delusional patient who has been poisoned by the mythological poison and thinks that there are really gods and monsters in the world. Don't forget, it's not like I haven't touched that lamp before, but there was no fat blue elf at all. Boss Luo just smiled noncommittally and then pointed to the front. There seems to be light over there. Why don't we go take a look? Maybe it's Arya and Otto. On the other side of the sand dune in front, there was indeed a glimmer of light. But if it was Arya and Otto, Claudia obviously didn't believe it. First of all, they were only relying on the North Star to travel, and Arya and Otto might not be going in this direction. Even if they were going in the same direction, they were riding on camels, and she was walking on foot. It would be strange if she could catch up with them. But even if it was not Arya and Otto, even if it was just a traveler in the desert, it was still good to meet them. At least there was a chance to seek help from the traveler. I hope your luck is really good. Claudia glanced at Luochu and finally whispered, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? Boss Luo asked curiously. Claudia hesitated for a while and then stammered, because, Because you should have a share of the oil lamp, but I secretly gave it to Otto. Actually, she didn't trust him at first because of the travel expenses, but she couldn't say it out loud. It's okay. Boss Luo said indifferently, that oil lamp for me is not very useful. Alright then. Claudia nodded. But she didn't understand the true meaning of the words, not very useful. She only thought that Luocio actually treated the oil lamp as an ordinary item. They quickly passed the sand dune with a glimmer of light. Sure enough, it was not Arya and Otto, nor was it the group of thugs in the camp, but a small group of nomads. Oh, it's the Bedouins. These two fellows are lucky, don't you think so, mister? At the dune where the faint light came from, two figures were looking into the distance. One of them was holding a pair of binoculars in his hand and was talking. They were Arya and Mr. Otto, who had quietly left after taking away the water and resources. The desert always protects the pure-hearted, Otto said indifferently. Let's go, I still need your help, Arya. Okay, mister. Arya smiled. Who asked me to take 3 million from you? Mr. Otto didn't say anything, he just quietly sat on the camel. Arya quickly followed and asked curiously, Mister, you went through so much trouble just to get this oil lamp? What's so special about this oil lamp? The oil lamp was now in Arya's hand. He breathed into the oil lamp and rubbed it. Probably everyone would do this subconsciously, probably because of a little unrealistic delusion. Mr. Otto didn't even look at it, as if he already knew the result. He said indifferently, for those who are qualified to own it, it's a treasure that can fulfill any wish. For you, it's not even worth much. Arya shrugged and threw the oil lamp back to Mr. Otto. I like dollar the most, I don't like things that are worthless. You white skins are always so weird. You must have too much money and nowhere to spend it. You don't know the pain of the poor. With that, Arya rode the camel in front. Mr. Otto looked down at the oil lamp in his hand, and seemed to be lost in thought. Since I passed the test and even brought you out successfully, why didn't I call you out? Mr. Otto frowned. Don't want to see me, at least, we haven't seen each other for so many years. The oil lamp was still in tatters, it even seemed to be covered with a layer of dim dust, and no one could rub it open. At night in the desert, the moon and stars were not rare. Two figures riding on camels slowly walked deeper into the desert. Here came the problem. Although they had already reached the camp of this small nomadic tribe, Claudia suddenly thought of a problem: the language barrier. Although the thugs seemed to be locals, they knew British, including Arya, so there was no problem with communication along the way. But what about the indigenous people who lived in the desert? Boss Luo walked up at some point and started talking to a middle-aged man who walked out of a tent. Not long after, Boss Luo turned around and waved at Claudia, calling her over. Claudia came to Luocio's side and asked in surprise, You know their language? I just learned it, of course. She couldn't say that. Luocio just smiled as a response, then slowly said, They are Bedouins, a nomadic tribe that lives in the desert. This gentleman is the head of this family, his name is Adil. The others are his family, wife, children, brothers, and so on. I see, I have heard of them before. Claudia nodded. I heard from my father that they are a very friendly tribe that likes to live a free life, so they have always lived in the desert. Some documentaries have also mentioned them. Boss Luo suddenly said, Claudia knows a lot of things and understands a lot of things. It is as if you are preparing to be an explorer. Claudia shrugged. When you have a father who likes to go on adventures, you will more or less know some of these things that are not very useful. Okay, let's not talk about this. Mr. Adil's family should not be the only one here, right? There should be more nearby? Boss Luo nodded. There is a water supply point nearby, so there should be a lot of Bedouins nearby. I think, in the village we went to before, there should be a lot of Bedouins. Those thugs captured a lot of people to develop the underground pyramid, but in the end there were only women and children left in the village. Claudia already knew where the men went. She suddenly shivered. not because she only knew fear at this time, but because the fear had long exceeded her psychological endurance, so she could not feel it. Now that she relaxed, she realized the horror of this day. She slumped to the ground, her entire body trembling. Her face was pale, and she was sweating profusely. Claudia lost consciousness in an instant and completely fainted. Feeling a trace of warmth, Claudia tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids were heavy, as if something was stuck to them. She could only see a vague figure approaching her in the darkness. "Don't come." Her reaction was abnormally big. Like a bird startled by the twang of a bough, she suddenly sprung up and reached out to grab the blanket covering her body. From her face to her eyes there was something called fear. "Did you have a nightmare?" I don't." Claudia seemed to have calmed down and saw the person clearly, her new classmate, so she shook her head. "Forget it, it's okay." "That's good." Boss Luo nodded and handed a bowl to Claudia. "This is tea made with camel milk. You must have fainted because you were dehydrated. Drink something liquid, it will help you recover faster." Claudia hesitated for a while, then reached out to take the bowl, and then sipped it. She suddenly stopped and looked at Luocio, then frowned and said, "I'm not used to people quietly approaching me when I'm sleeping. Can you do it next time?" "Of course." Boss Luo nodded and stood up. There should be an hour before dawn. "Have a good rest after drinking the tea." Claudia nodded. Actually, she was completely awake and didn't feel sleepy at this time, but her body was indeed weak, so she looked quite terrible. "Have a good rest." "Wait. Thank you." "Don't worry and have a good rest," Boss Luo said casually. "I'll be watching from outside, no one will quietly approach you." She opened her mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. She just lowered her head and silently drank the warm camel milk in the bowl. She felt that this new classmate in front of her was really a mysterious person. From being hated to now. In fact, it was only half a day. He actually didn't do anything, but her feelings were constantly changing. Chapter 15-20. Generally speaking, if there were symptoms of dehydration, it would take at least a few days to recover. But to Claudia's surprise, when the sun began to shine on the desert, she felt that her body had almost recovered. Perhaps it was the effect of the camel milk tea she drank last night. After all, it was made by the Bedouins. They had lived in the desert for generations and naturally knew many useful things. Claudia could only think in this direction. She could not possibly say that the camel milk tea had such a miraculous effect because her new classmate had cast a spell on it, right? Opening the tent curtain, Claudia saw a streak of gold on the horizon. She stretched lazily and wondered if she had been scared out of her wits yesterday. As an atheist, how could she have such thoughts? You've been here all this time?" She saw Boss Luo. Luocio was sitting not far from the tent, beside a bonfire. He was holding a book and reading it, seemingly engrossed in it. Boss Luo said casually, "Mr. Adil's family can only spare this tent. Anyway, there's a bonfire here, so it's not cold." "You?" Claudia did not know why, but she suddenly felt tears in her eyes. This guy always did things casually and always caught people off guard. "Why don't you go inside and sleep for a while? It's good to sleep for a while, you have not rested." "I'm not tired for the time being." Boss Luo looked up and smiled. "Don't worry, when I need to rest, I'll rest. I won't be a burden to you." "I didn't mean that." Claudia hurriedly shook her head. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly walked to the bonfire and sat down half a meter away from Boss Luo. She did not speak, just hugged her knees and looked at the burning flames in front of her. The surrounding smell was not very good, and she could not help but frown. "This is the smell of burning camel dung," Luocio said casually. "This dung is one of the most important fuels for the Bedouins. It also has a certain repellent effect. There are more poisonous insects in the desert." Claudia listened and turned her head. The sky was only slightly bright, and the light from the fire shone on Luocio's face. She looked a little fascinated and said softly, Actually, you seem to know a lot of things. Did you know that you would meet the Bedouins if you walked this way, so you took this path? Boss Luo looked up at the fading North Star and smiled. When I was young, my father told me that if I ever got lost, all I had to do was to look up at the North Star in the sky. That way, I would be able to find my way, and I would be able to find my way. Claudia suddenly giggled and said, "Fortunately, you're not in Antarctica. Otherwise, you'll think that your father is tricking you." Boss Luo just smiled. Claudia vaguely sensed that this topic seemed to have made the atmosphere quieter. However, her mind worked quickly and she quickly said, "Actually, my father also taught me a lot of knowledge. But I don't know why, but this knowledge is useless in this situation." Luochu said indifferently, "Perhaps it's not that it's useless, but that you haven't had the chance to use it yet. You really overestimate me." Claudia smiled bitterly and said, "I know myself. I'm actually just a bookworm. Inside, I'm much weaker than I look. What are you reading?" "Grimm's Fairy Tales." "Grimm's Fairy Tales." Claudia was stunned and then shook her head. She clearly had no interest in this kind of fairy tale book. However, she thought of something. Why did you bring a fairy tale book to the desert?" He didn't answer and asked, "Claudia, do you like fairy tales?" "I liked it when I was young, but I don't like it now." Claudia added quite truthfully, "Only little girls like fairy tales. Women like diamonds." Boss Luo smiled and said, "But little girls in fairy tales also like diamonds." "That's true." Claudia was startled. Then, she sighed helplessly and said, "An irrefutable truth. Mr. Adil made this last night. It's still hot. Do you want to eat it?" Luochu used 2 branches to pick up a bag from beside the bonfire. After opening it, there were some pasta-like biscuits inside. "I'm really a little hungry." Claudia nodded. Since she felt hungry, she naturally didn't hold back. Although it was just some extremely simple food, it was especially delicious at this time. Especially when the other party was meticulous in keeping the food warm. "It's really rare. The boys around me are never like this. It seems that we're almost at the place where your father inspected before," Luochu suddenly said at this time. Claudia suddenly stopped and looked at Luochu in shock. She subconsciously said, What did you say?" "When you were resting, I chatted with Mr. Adil for a while," Boss Luo said casually. "As we chatted, it seems that we've confirmed the location of the ancient site where your father inspected before he went missing. Also, it's not very far from here." "Really?" Claudia immediately stood up. Why did she come to this godforsaken place and almost lose her life? She originally came to find clues about her father's disappearance. You're really, Claudia said happily, "you're really a lucky guy." But Mr. Adil of the Bedouin people didn't suggest that they go to that place just like that. He even showed a hint of warning solemnness. "Why?" Claudia asked in confusion. Since it was a clue about her father's disappearance, she naturally wouldn't give up easily. Especially when the clue was right in front of her, no one would be willing to give up so easily. Mr. Adil, who was wearing a pair of bloomers, smoked a pipe and shook his head violently as he said something. Claudia didn't understand, but Boss Luo interpreted for her. Mr. Adil said that that place is where the demons live. If you go in carelessly, you'll lose your life. Even they don't dare to live near that place, even if it's a very rich oasis. There are no demons in this world. Even if there are only people who are like demons. Claudia shook her head, but she didn't want to continue arguing with the Bedouin people who believed in sections. There was no way to argue with them since they didn't understand each other. She told Boss Luo and asked Boss Luo to tell Mr. Adil that she didn't want to go to that place, but she hoped to buy camels, food, and water so that it would be more convenient to leave the desert. After buying the equipment, wouldn't she be able to go as she pleased? Boss Luo felt that Claudia's cleverness was not bad, so he followed her instructions and talked to Mr. Adil. In the end, they successfully exchanged a necklace and the clothes in Claudia's suitcase for some food and water. But Adil didn't intend to sell the camels at all. Claudia naturally couldn't do anything about it. Camels were indeed the most important companions for the people of the desert. I don't know what that place is. On the way, Claudia said curiously, there are too many strange things in this desert. The pyramid built underground, the magical nomads, and the fake magic lamp, haha. At this moment, Luo Qiu suddenly recalled his discussion with Claudia about their dreams. She said that her dream was to be a mathematician, the kind that could win the Fields Medal. But when she talked about these mysterious things, she was looking forward to it. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. According to the fragmentary information left behind by Professor Siejiatu before he disappeared and some words that he once said, Claudia could only speculate that her father's archaeological research team before he disappeared was an entire team. The exact number of people was unknown, and it seemed that they all hid their identities and only communicated with each other by code names. The only clue that Claudia could find about the members of her father's archaeological team was Golden Pupil. But all the network IP addresses of Golden Pupil were fake, so it was impossible to find out his real address and identity. After Professor Siejiatu finished his archaeological research and came back, he buried himself in research. In the end, he only left behind some strange research notes about the theory of God's Trinity. But it's an oasis? Claudia frowned at this time. I don't think I heard my father mention that there was an oasis in the archaeological site. Could it be it's actually not the same place? Boss Luo was more optimistic. Whether it was true or not, they would know when they went to that place. If it wasn't, returning to Mr. Adil's camp was actually not that far. You are so optimistic. Claudia shook her head. Wait, guess what I saw? Oh my God! She suddenly shouted, and her voice was filled with an unusually happy smile, as if she had vented her anger. Boss Luo looked in the direction that she was pointing at. Not far ahead, they could see 4 figures buried in the sand: Arya, Mr. Otto, and the camel they took away. When Claudia arrived in front of Arya and Mr. Otto, who were buried in the sand, she abruptly stopped in her tracks. Guess what I saw? Claudia looked at Arya and Mr. Otto, who were buried in the sand at this time, and her face was full of joy. Huh, strange, why are there 2 people buried in the sand? Is he a lost traveler? Or are they from the Earth's core people who live underground? All right. It's your enemy. Is that good enough? Arya glared at this time and said unhappily, I have seen the adventures of the Earth's core. Ha, retribution, right? Claudia was very happy at this time. Obviously, Arya and Mr. Otto fell into the quicksand while they were on their way, so they were trapped in this place. Moreover, looking at how their chest was about to sink, it was obvious that they had not been trapped for long. Mr. Otto, Mr. Arya, we meet again. Boss Luo did not mock and simply greeted. Even Claudia was stunned and asked stupidly, Is there anything I can help you with? They abandoned us and did not save us. Are you still planning to save them? Claudia asked in disbelief. Luo, are you also dehydrated? Is it serious? Boss Luo thought at this time and suddenly asked, Then according to Claudia, you planned to pretend that you did not see it, right? She frowned and looked at Arya and Otto, who were sinking bit by bit and did not dare to move at the same time. She was speechless for a moment. Why don't you decide? Luoqiu said indifferently at this time, If you don't care, we will continue on our way. If you plan to save them, then we will take action. How about it? How can I decide? Claudia gritted her teeth at this time. This kind of thing, me? You can't make your own decision? Luoqiu said indifferently, Then let's do it the other way around. If I decide to leave, will you pretend that this did not happen and follow me on the road? If I decide to save them, will you be willing to follow me to save them? Claudia opened her mouth again. She suddenly realized a problem. Regardless of whether the initiative was in her hands or not, she was still faced with a difficult choice. Miss, I am very sorry. Forgive me for what I did before, but seeing that we saved your lives. Arya hurriedly begged at this time. He was not a stubborn person to begin with. Shut up. Claudia glared at Arya at this time and glanced at Mr. Otto at this time. At this time, Mr. Otto's eyes were closed, as if he did not see Claudia and Luacio's arrival. No one knew what he was thinking, but their bodies were sinking to their necks. Why do they not look afraid at all? In the end, Claudia stomped her feet and said with gritted teeth, I can save them, but you have to do as I say. As you command, miss. Boss Luo smiled at this time. Claudia rolled her eyes, then looked at Arya and Mr. Otto, and said coldly, Saving you is not a problem. But first, you have to give me your bags and weapons. Especially you, Arya. You rotten old man. Arya. Actually, Arya was not old, but the sun in the desert was abundant and the ultraviolet rays were strong, so his skin was rough. He was only 29 years old this year. But what else could he say? How did he know that he would be trapped in the quicksand area? He grew up in the desert, and the quicksand he saw was obviously more than these pampered white skins rolling in bed sheets, okay? The appearance of the quicksand was really strange. He did not feel anything at all. Looking at the arrogant Claudia, Arya could not help but feel a deep sense of malice. It was as if he was punished for no reason at all. I will not do bad things in the future. Chapter 15:21. After spending some effort, they finally managed to drag Mr. Otto and Arya out of the quicksand. Correspondingly, their weapons were confiscated, especially Mr. Otto. After witnessing his flying dagger skills, Claudia carefully pointed her gun at Arya and asked him to search Mr. Otto's body thoroughly, making sure that he didn't hide a deadly flying dagger in some strange place. Well, somewhere like his boot. In the end, both of their hands were tied with nylon ropes used for climbing. After doing all this, Claudia seemed to relax a little. Why did you leave us behind? Claudia looked at the two coldly. She had actually discussed this with Boss Luo before, but she wanted to know the real answer. Probably people who aspired to become mathematicians had an unusual stubbornness in pursuing the answer. Arya said with a depressed face, Okay, I'll be honest. Mr. Otto and I actually wanted to cheat you, but we thought that it would be a burden to bring you along. We thought that our lives were more important than money, so we left with the supplies. I'm very ashamed. I abandoned you, but you still chose to save me. God, you're really an angel. Can you give me a chance to turn over a new leaf? I'll definitely repay you. No matter what difficulties we encounter, I'll definitely bring you out of this desert. Claudia looked like she didn't believe him at all. She fired a few shots at Arya's feet. Arya was so scared that he jumped up like an ant on a hot pan. It was actually the first time she fired at someone's feet. The only time she touched a gun was in the shooting club. At this time, her heart couldn't help but beat fast, but she looked calm. Only her breathing was a little chaotic. After taking a few deep breaths, Claudia looked at Boss Luo and showed a rather proud look. See, I guessed right, there is no magic lamp. You sous chef. Boss Luo just smiled, took some water from the supply bag, and gave it to Arya and Mr. Otto. Arya saw this and naturally thanked him. Mr. Aotua opened his eyes. He didn't seem to need much water, but his lips were dry and cracked. He opened his dry lips slightly. We meet again. This should be what Luacio said at the beginning, but he only responded now. Yes, we meet again, Mr. Aotua, Boss Luo said patiently. Mr. Aota thought for a while and suddenly said in a low voice, You should be an inhuman, right? Boss Luo asked calmly, What is inhuman? Mr. Aotua said calmly, What an inhuman can do is to become an inhuman. It doesn't have to be a creature with supernatural power in the legends. Those who have trained for a long time and have reached the limit of a human can also become an inhuman. or those who were different from ordinary people in certain aspects could also be called inhuman. It's impossible for a normal person to be as calm as you are. You've been walking in the desert for a long time, but not only have you not broken a sweat, you haven't even lost your stamina or spirit. This isn't something a normal human can do. Boss Luo said calmly, Mr. Aotoa, isn't your aura also good? What are you guys talking about? Claudia walked over with a frown. She was already dissatisfied with Luocio giving Arya water, and now seeing him feeding Aotoa water, her dissatisfaction increased. These two, do they have to be so nice to them? Boss Luo smiled and said indifferently, Student Claudia, Western countries are not very particular about humanitarianism. Claudia said calmly, I've never liked the scum protection law. I'm not going to talk about this with you. What do we do now? We saved them. What do we do now? Bring them with us? Luocio looked at Aotoa and Arya at the same time and asked calmly, Guys, why are you walking in this direction? Arya opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Mr. Aotoa suddenly said, There is an oasis in front. We planned to go there to replenish our supplies, but we didn't expect to encounter the undercurrent. Serves you right, Claudia sneered. Mr. Aotoa pretended not to hear and continued to look at Boss Luo and said, There is an ancient site hidden in the oasis. I see that you are also interested in ancient civilizations. Why don't you go and take a look yourself, maybe you will gain something. Or you originally planned to enter the oasis. After all, we met again on this road. At this moment, Claudia suddenly pulled Boss Luo aside and said in a low voice, Do you believe these two guys? They are full of lies. Luocio remembered a famous saying, The truth is also hidden in the lies. Claudia frowned and said, I'm not interested in talking in riddles here. Luocio smiled and said, Our destination is the oasis, so is their destination. Also, Aotoa also knows about the ancient site hidden in the oasis, and your father's final research is very likely to be this ancient site. Perhaps Aotoa also knows a lot about this ancient site. This. Claudia was stunned and then said helplessly, But this Arya is a complete selfish bastard, and Aotoa is full of lies. We have to be careful. As she said that, Claudia stuffed her pistol into Luocio's hand. After confiscating Arya's equipment, this broken pistol that she looted from the underground pyramid was returned to her hand, and she herself changed to a semi-automatic rifle. If there's something wrong, shoot first. Claudia said with a serious face, Don't feel burdened. This is the desert, do you still remember those thugs? The lives here are worthless. Only in your own hands are they valuable. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Is this what your father taught you? I know it myself. Claudia said indifferently, then shook her head. You are a simple-minded person. Sometimes, if you are too good to others, they might not reciprocate. I will remember your teachings, Miss Claudia, Boss Luo said in a low voice. Her originally stern face softened for some reason. She was probably the typical type who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. But in fact, most of the time, girls would not have much resistance to men who listened to them, in important matters. Later, the camel was successfully rescued from the quicksand. After experiencing many things one after another, Claudia seemed to have grown up by leaps and bounds. At this time, she turned over and sat on the camel, looking quite valiant. She let Luocio sit on the other camel, while Arya and Mr. Aotoa were tied up with ropes and dragged behind the camel. How long will it take to reach the oasis from here? She turned back and looked at Arya. Her tone was not very friendly. Arya was the type who could bow his head and adapt to circumstances. At this time, he said almost flatteringly, Beautiful lady, the journey is not far, we will definitely reach before you turn into a jerk. Do you believe that I will use sand to block your mouth? Claudia turned back and stared at Arya fiercely. This desert guide was so scared that he immediately shrunk his neck. But whether he was really scared or not, it was unknown. It was as if they had returned to the prison in the pyramid. Claudia and Arya were constantly arguing, and Boss Luo was chatting with Mr. Aota. Mr. Aota, have you been to the ruins of the oasis before? Once half a year ago, Mr. Aota said casually. Mr. Aota said casually, at that time, I was exploring this ruin with another archaeological team. Later, something happened and we disbanded. Half a year ago? Luochio blinked. At this time, Claudia suddenly looked at Boss Luo, but Luochio threw her a look to calm her down and asked her not to speak first. Claudia nodded slightly, but she was focused on listening to the conversation between the two, so she was not in the mood to continue to trouble Arya. I can prove that it is true. Arya quickly said, half a year ago, I also led Mr. Aota and the archaeological team into the desert. Luochio nodded and said, archaeological team? What kind of archaeological team is it? But Aota was thinking about the real direction of Luochio's question. What kind of archaeological team is it? He thought for a while and said slowly, they are all ordinary people. Of course, they are all rare scholars in their own fields, and their knowledge is quite rich. But for the secrecy of this archaeological team, we did not reveal our original names, and only used code names. Luochio asked expressionlessly, what is your code name? Aota looked deeply at Boss Luo, and then quickly said a name, Golden Pupil. For a moment, Claudia's breath suddenly quickened. But she remembered Boss Luo's reminder. This time was different from when they just left the pyramid, and she did not know why her trust in this new classmate seemed to be increasing incredibly. She quietly took a deep breath, suppressed the impatience in her heart, and pretended that she did not care very much. Luochio asked curiously, Golden Pupil? Does it have any special meaning? Mr. Aota said indifferently, if I say that I have seen most of the treasures in the world, and that I have a pair of eyes that can distinguish real treasures from fake ones, would you believe it? Luochio said indifferently, it takes a very long time to see most of the treasures in the world. Mr. Aota, you have a lot of time. Maybe more than you think. Mr. Aota said casually. Luochio smiled and said, Mr. Aota, I don't know if you can tell me about this ancient site and your exploration at that time. Mr. Aota asked curiously, even if I tell you, would you believe it? Whether we believe it or not is another matter. Boss Luo shook his head and said, but at least it's better than not having any reference, right? I don't know. Unexpectedly, Mr. Aota said this directly. Are you kidding? You don't know? Claudia finally couldn't hold back and said angrily, do you believe that I will bury you in the sand again and let you be exposed to the sun? White girl, I can testify about this matter. Arya quickly said, even if you bury us, I'm afraid that we can't tell you too much. In this situation, it's not that we don't want to cooperate, but we really don't have the ability to cooperate. There are some inexplicable things in that place. Claudia glared and directly raised the semi-automatic in her hand. Arya was so scared that he quickly hid behind Mr. Aota. Mr. Aota didn't seem to be afraid. He looked straight at Claudia and said, I lost my memory after entering the ancient site, so did Arya. Until now, I still can't find the reason why I lost my memory. Maybe I can recover it in the future. But now I really can't tell you, even if you shoot. You think I don't dare? Claudia clenched her teeth and put her finger on the trigger. Boss Luo said, those thugs may still be chasing us. The gunshot may attract them. Claudia had no choice but to lower her hand in frustration, but she had nowhere to vent her anger. She could only hit the camel's body with the handle of her gun and muttered, only an idiot like you would listen to such nonsense. You are the most reasonable one, yellow-skinned boy. Arya glanced at Boss Luo gratefully. But as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly fell to the ground and ate a mouthful of sand. It was amazing that he could trip while walking. He seemed to have felt the malice from an unknown place again. You lost your memory, Boss Luo thought at this time and said, including the other members of the archaeological team, Is it the same? Mr. Aotuan nodded and recalled. In fact, the formation of this archaeological team is quite mysterious. We only know that there is a sponsor, but we have never seen the sponsor's face with our own eyes. But I have a feeling that this sponsor is actually in this archaeological team. He may have some other purpose. Later, we gathered in a nearby city. After getting to know each other, we set off directly. At that time, the guide was indeed Arya. Arya was recommended by me, because before that, I had cooperated with him a few times, so I know his ability. Very quickly, we found the ruins in the oasis that needed to be explored. At that time, actually, I didn't agree to enter the ruins immediately, because there were many valuable things in the periphery of the ruins that were worth studying. But there seemed to be a sudden rush in the team. After a vote, the minority wins over the majority, so we entered the ruins without being fully prepared. Then, I completely lost all my memory after entering the ruins. Mr. Aotua frowned at this time. When I came to, I was already at the periphery of the ruins. What was even more unbelievable was that the core building of the ruins suddenly disappeared in front of our eyes. Chapter 1522. Collective amnesia could still be explained by the members of the archaeological team inhaling some special gas or something like that in the ancient site. But for an atheist like Claudia, it was naturally unbelievable that the core building in the ancient site disappeared into thin air. Maybe you think we are the kind of children who are easy to deceive? Her voice was even faintly unfriendly. Mr. Otto said indifferently, I have already said that you may not believe what I say. As for whether what I said is true or not, you can judge for yourself. Of course. Claudia snorted coldly, I don't believe it. But Boss Luo asked very patiently, Mr. Otto, do you still remember what the missing building looked like? This made Mr. Otto stunned. Most people who heard about this matter only cared about what happened to the archaeological team in the ancient site, or how the core building disappeared. They only cared about what the core building looked like. But he still carefully recalled, it was a temple. In fact, similar temples can be found in many places in this country. Because from the architectural style and the estimated records of some of the carvings, there is no doubt that this is a building about the sun god Horus. The sun god? Claudia frowned. You mean the god of Horus, the eagle god? Mr. Otto nodded, then smiled and said, It seems that Miss Claudia has also done some research on mythology. Claudia didn't care about Mr. Otto's praise. She was still frowning as she muttered, The image of the eagle god has been merged and changed several times. It's not perfect to just use the sun god to represent it. You shouldn't make such a mistake. Why are you looking at me? She found that her new classmate was staring at her at this time, so she couldn't help but subconsciously avoid his gaze. Boss Luo smiled and said, Miss Claudia's knowledge is very solid. It's just some information that can be memorized from books, nothing special. Claudia snorted, but there was still a hint of hidden pride on her face. Mr. Otto said indifferently at this time, Yes, the clergy of the eagle god has been merged and changed several times, so a single name can't completely represent it. But what if it is a building from a certain period of its existence in the myth? You mean? Claudia was startled. Heliopolis in the home of the gods? Speaking of which, the nearby area is indeed relatively close. In this case, it is possible to see the image of the most worshipped sun god. Why are you looking at me? I've been studying theology for half a year, and I've read a lot of miscellaneous literature, okay? Boss Luo shook his head and said indifferently, I just thought of a classmate. Her dream is to be an explorer. Seeing you here, I feel like seeing her realize her dream. She? Claudia furrowed her brows. Who knew what she was thinking? She shook her head and composed herself. I don't believe that there would be any buildings that would suddenly disappear. This might be because you encountered a mirage. The high temperature of the desert might also have caused your body to deteriorate. If there was any external stimulation at this time, it might have caused you to collectively hallucinate. As for the disappearance of memories, it still needs to be investigated. However, even if you lost part of your memory, you should still remember the specific route, right? Then lead the way for me, don't play any tricks. This is the desert, the place where human nature is the most tested. Maybe I can't withstand the test. These words made Arya suddenly shiver. In such a hot day, he felt that the current Claudia seemed to have changed. Maybe this is the real her? Oh, beautiful Miss Claudia. Arya's face was unusually thick at this time. He even shamelessly saluted and said, "If you can give me a bottle of water, I will gladly offer my loyalty to you." Claudia gave him a dictation, turned around and left. This is the appearance of the core building that disappeared. At this time, Mr. Aotoa handed over a notebook to Boss Luo, on which was a sketch drawn by him. The notebook and pen were taken out by Luocio, but no one was curious about how he took them out from his body, and no one found anything wrong with him taking these things out. Obviously, he was empty-handed from the beginning. "Thank you." Luocio took it and looked down at the sketch in the notebook. This was a multi-columned building with a Roman architectural style. It was a trapezoidal pyramid with 6 levels. Mr. Otto said that the height of each level of the pyramid was about 7 meters. In this case, the original height of the whole disappeared building should be quite conspicuous. Boss Luo looked in the direction that the Bedouin Adil pointed, but the high temperature caused the front to be distorted. At the end of the distortion, he vaguely saw a touch of light brownish green. The oasis in the desert. It seemed that it was not that far away. Along the way, Claudia became silent and did not make things difficult for Arya anymore. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. Luocio chatted with Mr. Otto. Boss Luo even got down from the camel and walked with Mr. Otto. Claudia was angry at first, but the more she looked at him, the more she couldn't get angry. She could only let him be. She suddenly realized that this new classmate, this guy seemed to be easygoing, but he was actually very opinionated. It was as if no one could influence him. Men are all like this, she thought. "Mr. Otto, have you explored many historical sites?" Boss Luo asked casually. Mr. Otto said indifferently, "After all, I am in this field. It is normal to come into contact with many historical sites. Why do you ask?" Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "Apart from being interested in the civilization of ancient Egypt, there is also something else that interests me. I admire Mr. Otto's profound knowledge, so I can't help but want to learn from you." Mr. Otto smiled and said, "You look like a real scholar. Your teacher should be very happy to have a student like you." Boss Luo's teacher, apart from those teachers in the teaching system since childhood, was only Miss Maid. He smiled casually and said, "I don't know if Mr. Otto has anything to do with the Gospel of Judas." Mr. Otto was obviously stunned, then he frowned and said, "I know its existence, and I have done related research. Last year, I even planned to do a research on ancient characters, and I considered the Coptic language in the Gospel of Judas as one of the research directions. But because of some things, it was temporarily put aside." "Some things?" Otto looked at Boss Luo strangely, then he said carelessly, "Even if it is about the historical site research half a year ago. As I said, it was contacted by a mysterious sponsor. We came from all over the world. This archaeological activity seems to have been prepared for quite a long time." Boss Luo nodded. He was sure that Mr. Otto in front of him was the golden pupil he had contacted on the internet at the beginning, but because the previous shop owner had bought a certain service, Boss Luo didn't think about this problem. The previous owner couldn't restrict the next owner. Obviously, Boss Luo, because as the owner of the shop, his ability to improve was unknown. So even the previous owner couldn't buy a permanent service in this field. Therefore, the previous owner could only use another method to restrict the next owner, Luocio's initiative in searching for his whereabouts with a relatively small price. After all, canceling the initiative for a short period of time was obviously much easier than canceling the initiative permanently. but it was only for a short period of time. When the service expired, or if Luo Chiu, as the current shop owner, was aware of it and purchased the cancellation service, then the previous shop owner's behavior would be worthless. So far, Boss Luo's only opinion on the former boss's behavior was that the former boss, Mr. Arthas, seemed to be fighting for a relatively relaxed time. Of course, Boss Luo wouldn't tell Mr. Aotua these secret thoughts. He still revolved around the Gospel of Judas. Mr. Aotua, what do you think about the content of the Gospel of Judas? Aotua thought for a while and said, for a long time, this sect has been regarding Judas as a traitor through various documents, but in the Gospel of Judas, this view was overturned. According to the content of the Gospel, not only was Judas not a traitor, he was even the closest friend of Jesus and the most loyal disciple. The reason why Judas betrayed the Holy Son was because of the Holy Son. His purpose was to hand the Holy Son over to the person in power to complete his redemption plan. This is overturning the knowledge of the believers for thousands of years. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "That's true." Mr. Aotua nodded. But from the perspective of the long history of human civilization, the information about this sect is actually quite chaotic. In this process, there are many coincidences between mythical figures. Just like the eagle god Horus, his image has undergone several melting and changes. In fact, most of the mythical figures recorded in the literature of the world have more or less similar situations. The reason for this is very complicated. It could be related to human migration, or it could be related to the integration of ethnic groups and cultures. But the real history is only known by those involved. Boss Luo suddenly asked, "Then, Mr. Aotua, do you know?" Mr. Aotua looked at the young man in front of him meaningfully and said indifferently, "How would I know? But, since you are interested in the gospel, I can recommend you a person who is very knowledgeable in this field. If you can safely walk out of this desert and have time, you can go and find this person." "Can you tell me where this scholar is?" Boss Luo was naturally interested. Mr. Aotua nodded and said, "His name is Prussian Kaiser. He is currently working in the National Geographic Society in America. He is a consultant in the society. If you want to visit him, you can mention my name and add the name Golden Pupil." "You have really helped me a lot, Mr. Aotua." Boss Luo smiled slightly. He was not disappointed because he did not get more information about the gospel from Aotua. Instead, he vaguely felt comfortable because he got other clues from Aotua. It was like solving a puzzle step by step. These steps seemed to be able to fascinate him and make his calm heart faintly ripple. "You will surpass all of them, but you will be cursed for generations because of this," Mr. Aotua said suddenly. Boss Luo blinked and showed a thoughtful expression. Mr. Aotua smiled and said, "This is a record in the Gospel. It is what the Son of God said to the traitor Judas because the Son of God told him a secret that no one knows, the real mystery of the kingdom of heaven. But in the translated Gospel, we didn't find any more explanations about the true mystery of the kingdom of heaven. Of course, I'm also very interested in this mystery. If you can solve this mystery in the future and remember me, you can tell me." Luochio directly agreed and said that if Mr. Aotua was still there at that time, he would definitely arrange it personally and tell him the result. He said that he should still be there. After all, he looked so young now. No matter what, he should still have a few decades of life left. They were like good friends. The conversation between the two made Claudia feel that something was wrong. What's with the fake friendship between the two? New student, don't be led astray by this old man. At this moment, Boss Luo suddenly asked, "By the way, Mr. Aotua, do you know a lady named Maria?" "Maria?" Aotua frowned. "In my life, I met too many women named Maria. I don't know what you are asking about." Boss Luo smiled and said, "Nothing. Maybe I remembered wrongly." Mr. Aotua looked at Luochio in confusion and then shook his head. He vaguely felt that the young man in front of him was hiding more secrets than himself. Maria. Who is she? At this moment, Claudia came over and asked curiously, "Is she the classmate you just mentioned who dreams of being an explorer?" "That's the other one." Boss Luo smiled and said. "The other one? That's two? Including the one who asked for leave. How many are there?" Unfaithful. Chapter 15:23. The closer they got to the mysterious oasis, the more they saw animal corpses buried in the sand, but there were only animal corpses. Just like what the Bedouin Adil said, there were few people around here. Even if they knew that there was an oasis with plenty of water, they would rather live in a more difficult place. The more primitive the tribe, the deeper the worship and reverence for the primitive. Luochio and Mr. Aotoa stopped talking about the Gospel of Judas. Maybe it was because they were getting closer to their destination. Everyone gradually became silent, including Arya, who looked like he would die if he didn't speak. "The camel in front can't go any further," Arya suddenly said loudly. "If you go any further, the camel will lose control and throw you to the ground. Don't believe me, otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you when you are thrown off." Claudia looked at Boss Luo dubiously, only to see the Boss Luo nodding slightly. Claudia didn't say anything this time. She actually felt that the camel under her was gradually becoming more and more difficult to control. The camel's desire to move forward was constantly decreasing. "What is in front of us?" Claudia couldn't help but frown. "God." Arya put his hands in front of his chest and bowed toward the oasis in the distance. "We humans shouldn't offend the great God, we will be punished." Claudia sneered. "But you have already offended him half a year ago, and now you are doing the same." Arya naturally had a twisted theory, he said bluntly. "God won't be too harsh on hard-working people. I am a hard-working person, and I have a heart of respect for God." "Is this heavenly God blind?" Claudia snorted and was about to climb down from the camel. Unexpectedly, the camel under her suddenly became chaotic and started to spin around. Claudia was indeed thrown off the camel's back. Fortunately, the ground was full of fine sand, so she wasn't injured. At this time, the camel broke free and quickly ran away from the oasis. Claudia chased for a few steps but couldn't catch up, so she chose to give up and walked back with a gloomy face. "Why didn't your camel lose control?" After returning, Claudia looked at Luochio in surprise. Since Boss Luo chose to walk with Mr. Aotoa, he didn't sit on the camel anymore. He only held the rope tied to the camel. This camel was very obedient at this time, without any sign of losing control. Animals will lose control because they feel uneasy and dangerous. Mr. Aotoa said at this time, "They are much more sensitive than humans. Creatures like camels, the ability to predict danger in the desert is second to none." This camel probably didn't feel any danger, or it just felt safe. "Is this a female camel?" Claudia rolled her eyes in annoyance. At this time, Luochio suddenly let go of the rope in his hand and stretched out his hand to pat the camel's body, saying softly, "It's been a long journey. Go find your companions." This camel seemed to be able to understand him. At this time, it softly neighed twice and ran in the direction of the camel that lost control. But from time to time, it would stop and look back, until it finally disappeared among the sand dunes on the way here. Why did you let it go? How can we ride it?" Claudia was about to go crazy at this time. "This is the desert. No one from the Animal Protection Association will look for you. People who love animals." Boss Luo said, "Since there is only one camel left, then it's not easy for us to ride it, right?" Claudia opened her mouth and stomped her feet, muttering, "Let's ride it together." "Stop arguing. Look." Arya suddenly stopped the conversation and pointed in front, where the oasis was located in panic. On the road ahead, at the end of the distorted air due to the heat, a huge swaying building could be vaguely seen in the brownish-green oasis. The swaying of the building was naturally due to the refraction of the light, but even so, The outline of this huge building could still be seen clearly. Claudia hurriedly took the notebook that Otto had sketched from Boss Luo's hand, and compared it with the building in front of them. There really is a historical site. She calmed down and looked at Boss Luo with a surprised expression, and it's exactly the same. At this time, Claudia suddenly looked at Arya and Mr. Otto, sneering, and the fact proves that you are lying again. Didn't you say that the core temple disappeared? Look at what this is. This is the missing temple that you drew. It's exactly the same. Mr. Otto didn't answer at this time, but frowned with a trace of confusion, looking straight at the oasis in front of him. Say something, Mr. Liar. Claudia snorted again. At this moment, Mr. Otto only glanced at Claudia indifferently. Without saying anything, he walked past the crowd and headed straight for the oasis. Claudia wanted to stop him, so she pulled hard on the rope that was tied to Mr. Otto. But what she pulled back was only a broken nylon rope. Mr. Otto's hands that were tied behind his back moved flexibly a few times, and the rope that tied him automatically untied and dropped to the ground. He still walked forward, but his pace was much faster than when he came, and he looked unusually light. How did he do it? I didn't tie a normal knot. Claudia pointed at Mr. Otto's back view, which was unbound like a magician's performance. She looked at the new male student in the class in a daze, her face full of astonishment. Boss Luo just smiled and said casually, "What kind of knot is that?" Claudia opened her mouth as if she was at a loss. She shook her head. "It's nothing. Aotua is weird everywhere. We have to follow him closely so that he won't do anything in secret. So far, he's the only person we've found who knows what happened to my father when he was researching the ancient ruins. I don't believe what he said about losing his memory at all." As she said, Claudia even took out her mobile phone, turned on the camera mode, and quickly chased after him with a gun. It seemed that she wanted to record everything. At this time, Arya imitated Otto and twisted his wrist a few times, but the knot was getting tighter and tighter, and it was so painful that he was about to cry. He attracted Boss Luo's gaze, and finally could only smile embarrassedly, lowering his head and walking silently. The distance between them and the mysterious ancient ruins was shortening little by little. They even reached the periphery of the oasis without any accidents on the way. Mr. Aotua, who had been walking at the front, finally stopped at this moment. Standing outside the oasis, Mr. Aotua raised his head and looked at everything inside. He suddenly said in a low voice, "I have been to this place more than once." But no one heard him say this. Claudia, who finally caught up, because Mr. Otto finally stopped here, she didn't expect that Mr. Otto, who stopped, suddenly walked forward and disappeared into the bushes of the oasis in the blink of an eye. It was hard to imagine that in the center of the barren and extremely harsh desert there could be such a vibrant oasis. The plants here were the juicy type, and there were even fruit trees that could be seen everywhere. The harsh environment was scorching hot, but because of the tall plants that could provide shade, there was a rare touch of coolness here. Even the water was cool, as sweet as the well water. The partial contrast of the geographical environment made Claudia, a top student who believed in science, couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Claudia guessed with her half-baked geographical knowledge that there was probably an underground river with abundant water under the oasis, or else it wouldn't be able to grow such a lush oasis. Those Bedouin people actually gave up such a good place, it's really unreasonable. Claudia casually picked a bunch of red fruits from a fruit tree and put them into her mouth. "This is a date palm, eat it without worry, it's not poisonous, and it's very nutritious. Usually, eating a few of them is enough for a day's consumption, mainly sugar." Boss Luo took two and tasted them, feeling that the flavor was not bad. What's with your gaze?" Claudia felt that her new classmate's gaze was a little different, and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Are you afraid that I'm lying to you?" Boss Luo smiled and said, I've said before, Claudia, you're very powerful, but it's not the time for you to show it. You see, isn't it now?" She shrugged expressionlessly, but she was somewhat proud in her heart, and even slightly shook her head, as if there was a little innocent girl living in her body. "Eat what? Hurry up and go." The next second, Claudia used the semi-automatic rifle in her hand to knock Arya's head. This desert guide was really hungry at this time, so he tiptoed to bite the fruits on the tree, and started to eat them in big mouthfuls. Well, a big girl lived here. The deeper they went, the denser the plants became, and even to the point where it was difficult to walk. Mr. Otto raised his head and looked at the building in the depths of the dense plant. There were even many small wounds on his body caused by the sharp leaf. However, these wounds healed in a very short period of time. His face looked old and gray, but the skin under his clothes was very smooth. "I've been here before. I've been here before. I've been here before." He kept repeating the same words until he finally pushed aside the last obstacle, completely walked out of the shelter-like plants, and stood in front of a huge temple. He walked forward until he reached the entrance of this trapezoidal pyramid temple, but was finally blocked by a huge stone door that was completely closed. Mr. Otto took a deep breath, pressed his palm on this huge stone door, and carefully touched the engraved lines on the stone door. At this moment, the stone door suddenly trembled, and then slowly rose. He frowned. The rising stone door was connected to a dark passage, as if there was a figure's voice coming from the depths of this passage. It was like a snake's voice. The pitch-black tunnel seemed to be a path to the underworld. Mr. Aotoa suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill. He hesitated for a moment, then finally took a step forward and stepped into the stone door. "Stop!" But at this moment, a loud voice came from behind. It was Claudia's voice. Mr. Otto, who suddenly heard the voice, suddenly shivered. At this moment, he found that he was already soaking wet. At this moment, a large amount of sweat was excreted from his body. Although he also sweated, because of his physique, the amount was much less than that of ordinary people. Such a large amount of sweat, it was only a few times in so many years. His heart skipped a beat at this moment. Mr. Aotoa immediately retracted his footstep. He could only feel that the faint snake-like voice became louder and louder in his mind. His face suddenly turned pale, and then he felt dizzy. "What do you want to do?" Claudia, who came from behind, grabbed Otto's arm and asked in a low voice, "Are you hiding something?" At this moment, Mr. Otto looked back at Claudia, and at the same time, Claudia saw Mr. Otto's face clearly. She suddenly screamed in horror. Aotoa's face was filled with tiny cracks at this moment. It was as if his entire body was a doll made of clay. His face, his neck, and even his exposed skin were all cracked like a clay doll that had been over-dried. This horrible appearance was the reason why Claudia screamed instantly. She instinctively loosened her hand that grabbed Otto's arm. Mr. Otto lost his support at this moment, and directly fell to the ground with his eyes rolled back. "What happened?" "I don't know, he suddenly." Claudia turned back, looking at Luaccio, who came from behind, and became extremely flustered. I just grabbed him, and he suddenly fell down. His appearance has become extremely terrifying, very, very terrifying." Hearing this, Arya hurriedly turned Mr. Otto, who had fallen to the ground, over. But at this moment, when he saw Otto's appearance, he was suddenly shocked, and he was so scared that he directly sat up. This? Is there really a God? The God is going to punish us, punish us. As he said this, Arya suddenly crawled on the ground, his whole body trembling, and his mouth kept muttering something unknown, but Luaccio could tell that this was the dialect of the Bedouin people. It seemed that Arya was the same as Mr. Adil from the small tribe. They were also Bedouin people. At this time, Boss Luo glanced at the unconscious Otto, and when he was about to carefully examine him, the red genie hiding in the magic lamp suddenly spoke. A suppressed voice. "Inside there is an evil aura. I can feel a power that is far stronger than me. In this world, there is a power that is stronger than me, the genie of the genie of the genie of the genie. Quickly go, take me away. The thing inside seems to be waking up. Quickly. In the end, the red genie's voice became nervous. Chapter 1524. Mr. Aotua suddenly collapsed, and there were strange cracks on his body. The reason why it was strange was because there was no blood flowing out from the cracks. That was why it was so strange. At this moment, seeing Arya crawling on the ground in a panic, and seeing the dark tunnel behind the giant stone door that was opened, the atmosphere of fear instantly increased. Claudia suddenly woke up and shuddered. In fact, the best decision at this time was to leave this mysterious oasis as soon as possible. Originally, it was very strange for such a lively oasis to appear in the depths of the desert. She had secretly thought of retreating, but when she saw that her new classmate was silent, as if he was thinking about something, she couldn't help but say, "Mr. Aotua has become so strange, maybe it is some kind of virus. But even if it is a virus, there should be blood flowing out from the cracks of the human body. There must be something in here that made all of this seem so unbelievable. How about we don't go in? Oh, this is a good woman. She is right. Don't go in. Don't go in." The red genie's voice was urgent and fast. Not long ago, it was still scolding the woman, but now it was screaming shamelessly. It was probably because it had lost its dignity that it did not care much about things like shame. Ah! At this time, Arya actually screamed. He collapsed on the ground, his whole body trembling, and his face was full of fear. He stretched out his trembling finger and pointed at a pile of sand in front of him. The position of the sand. It should be Mr. Aotua who was lying on the sand. "I don't know, it's not me. Mr. Aotua," his body suddenly scattered and turned into sand. "Arya, your body?" Claudia suddenly opened her eyes wide. My body?" Arya was stunned and looked at his hands subconsciously. When he found that there were cracks on his hands like Mr. Aotua's, he suddenly stopped breathing. How did this happen? What did I become? What happened to me?" At this time, there were also cracks on Arya's face. He touched his face in horror, but he could not accept that he had become like this. No, 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 no! I don't want to become like this. I don't want. The excessive fear caused Arya's rationality to completely collapse. He scrambled to get up, turned around, and rushed into the dense grass behind him, trying to escape from this place. But before he could go far, his body suddenly shattered, like a sand sculpture that was pushed to the ground. He was right in front of Boss Luo and Claudia. In the end, he turned into a pile of sand on the ground. Claudia gulped and subconsciously took a step back. However, the strength in her legs seemed to have been sucked out. Her legs gave way and she fell to the ground, unable to think at all. Boss Luo furrowed his brows. At that moment, in his vision, Mr. Otto, who had turned into sand, and Arya did not have any souls spilling out. But they had souls. Arya's was a fake soul, Mr. Otto's was a real soul. From the beginning of contact, Boss Luo could easily distinguish between them in his vision. He could not help but look at the huge temple in front of him. Luocio walked to the huge stone door, thought for a while and reached out to touch it. Unexpectedly, Claudia suddenly rushed forward and grabbed Boss Luo's arm. "Don't!" Just now, Aotua had touched this huge rock, which was why his body became like this. There might be something on this huge stone, maybe a mutated fungus, or a virus, we don't know. But Arya did not touch this door. Luocio said casually. Claudia said seriously, "But he touched Otto's body, so he might be infected." Boss Luo said at this time, "Assuming that your father and Otto really explored this temple in half a year, do you think it is possible that your father also touched this stone?" Claudia was shocked and subconsciously said, "You mean, my father didn't go missing, but just like Otto and Arya, turned into a pile of sand?" Boss Luo glanced at Claudia and suddenly said, "Didn't you say that your father went missing for no reason and couldn't be found?" This, Claudia opened her mouth. She seemed to find it difficult to accept such a ridiculous conjecture, or perhaps she was unwilling to accept the conjecture that her father had died and turned into a pile of sand so easily. "Impossible. My father went missing after he came back. Look at Otto, look at Arya. How long has it been since they touched the stone door, so it's impossible." But from what we know so far, this is the explanation that is most likely to be close to the truth, right? Could it be that it is really like this? Claudia looked as if she had lost her soul and became dejected. She stared blankly at the opened passageway and muttered, "Father, he turned into sand." She probably needed some time to digest some things. Boss Luo glanced at Claudia casually and walked to the pile of sand that Mr. Otto turned into. Only the original body turned into sand. As for the clothes and equipment, they did not disappear. Boss Luo found the bag that contained the magic lamp in the sand and immediately heard the red magic lamp's nagging voice. Boss Luo snapped his fingers and the world suddenly became much quieter, but inside the magic lamp, the red magic lamp could not help but cry like a ghost and cry like a wolf. It did not understand why the flame in the magic lamp suddenly became so much stronger. During the time it became a magic lamp spirit, it had never encountered such a strong flame when it tried to break through the restrictions of the magic lamp. Boss Luo naturally could not hear what was going on inside the magic lamp world. He put aside the bag that contained the magic lamp, then squatted down and used his hand to push away the sand on the ground. In the sand, he found a necklace. The pendant seemed to be some kind of ancient jade. It was emerald green in color and polished into the shape of an eye. Boss Luo held the eye-like pendant in his hand and looked at it carefully. The Eye of Horus. Boss Luo had encountered another item that was related to the Eye of Horus, other than this pendant, the Ring of Horus, a ring that caused the same individual in many subworlds to swap with each other. Luo, you? Look in front. Claudia's voice was intermittent, as if she was extremely frightened. Boss Luo turned around and saw light footsteps coming from the dark passage behind the huge stone door. It seemed that something was slowly walking out. Two figures. Their appearances gradually became clearer. So clear that it felt like an illusion. They were even talking to each other. They were clearly Arya and Mr. Otto. "Mr. Otto, we finally got out of this damn place. What the hell is this place? Next time, no matter how much money you give me, I will never come to this damn place again." Do you remember what we saw inside? Inside? It seems like there are people outside. Mr. Otto, look. Who are you? Arya, who was wearing another set of clothes, looked vigilant. As for Mr. Otto, who was also wearing another set of clothes, he frowned as if he was thinking about something. Claudia, she could only stare at them blankly, as if she had completely stopped thinking. Listening to their conversation, she even had a ridiculous feeling that the two who walked out of the temple were Arya and Mr. Otto from half a year ago. Boss Luo blinked. In his vision, they both had souls, the souls of Arya and Otto. "Tell me, who are you people? Why are you here?" Arya suddenly raised the pistol in his hand and pointed at Claudia and Boss Luo outside the huge stone door. "Why are you following behind us? Compared to this, other than the two of you, no one else came out?" Boss Luo asked calmly. The new Arya and Mr. Otto frowned at the same time. Claudia also quietly opened her mouth, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she chose to cooperate silently. Claudia suddenly became less nervous, except that she quietly pinched the corner of her clothes and moved to Luacio's side. "What are you trying to say?" Mr. Otto thought for a while and asked. Boss Luo said seriously, "A teacher from our school also participated in this archaeological activity. This is the teacher's daughter, and I am her classmate. We followed the clues left by this teacher and came here. Well, then we saw you. Your teacher? Arya couldn't help but ponder, as if he was thinking about the authenticity of these words. Mr. Otto asked indifferently, "What's his name?" "Siegetu." Boss Luo said the name of Claudia's father. Arya was stunned, then he opened his eyes wide and looked at Claudia in shock. "A white-skinned girl, you are Mr. Siegetu's daughter?" No matter whether this Arya was real or fake, he was still annoying. Claudia frowned but still nodded. "You know my father's name? Don't you always use your own code name to communicate? This is Mr. Golden Eyes." At this time, Arya put down his pistol and looked at Mr. Otto. "Looks like it's true." He called out, "Your unpleasant nickname, Mr. Otto?" Mr. Otto didn't say anything, he just shook his head and walked to the side. He looked at the huge temple beside him and fell into deep thought. Arya, who didn't know what was wrong with Mr. Otto, shrugged and walked a few steps forward to Boss Luo and Claudia. "Hey, relax, I won't hurt you," Arya said with a smile. "I'm good friends with your father, Mr. Siegetu. He gave me a lot of British goods, I like him very much." "Ha!" Claudia nodded. She looked at Luo Qiu and asked curiously, "You guys should be using code names to contact each other. Why did you know my father's name when I said it?" Arya was stunned and asked curiously, "Is Siegetu's real name not a code name? If that's the case, Mr. Siegetu is really an honest person." "Well, a good person, I like him even more." Claudia shook her head and asked, "Where's my father?" Arya pointed at the huge stone door behind him and said, "We went in together just now. But I don't know what happened, we came out, should be coming out soon?" "What did you encounter inside?" Claudia quickly asked. Arya crossed his arms and pondered. After thinking for a while, he finally shook his head and said, "I don't remember. Otto asked me the same question just now, but I can't remember at all. What the hell? I really can't remember." Claudia swallowed and said. She suddenly wrapped her hand with her clothes, then reached out to grab Arya's arm, and pinched it. "Little girl, what are you doing? Even if you're Mr. Siegetu's daughter, I won't go easy on you." Claudia acted like she didn't hear it, retracted her arm and walked quickly to Boss Luo, whispering, "He's real. I can feel his pulse. He's real." Boss Luo nodded, then smiled and said, "The things inside the temple are quite interesting. I want to go in and take a look." "Don't. What if you become like them?" Claudia panicked. Boss Luo suddenly said, "If there's another me that can come out, can you tell, Claudia?" This joke isn't funny at all. Claudia stomped her feet. At this moment, Mr. Otto suddenly moved. He looked directly at Arya and said loudly, "Arya, I plan to go in again. If they come out later, you tell them about this. As for these two young people, you stay with them first." After saying that, Mr. Otto walked into the passageway behind the stone door without hesitation. However, his back was nowhere to be seen in an instant. Arya scratched his head, then shrugged helplessly and sat on the ground. He then smiled at Claudia and said, "Little girl, I'm hungry. Did you bring anything to eat? Aren't there a lot of fruits outside? Can't you pick them yourself?" Claudia said in a bad mood. Arya said, When did this happen? I didn't see it when I came in this morning." Claudia opened her mouth. Even though the Arya in front of her was a living person, the more she talked with him and the more she thought about him, the more Claudia felt her heart tremble. Arya just turned into sand. Chapter 1525. But no matter what the origin of this Arya was, in Claudia's heart, there was an absurd wish. She even hoped that her father, Professor Siegetu, would also come out from this huge stone gate. Even if it was only half a year ago, it would be possible. Claudia couldn't help but be shocked by her own thoughts. However, the sudden transformation of Otto and Arya into sand, as well as the reappearance of Otto and Arya from the door, was something that all the knowledge she had learned in the past 20 years couldn't explain. I want to go in and take a look." Claudia, who was still hesitating and even had the thought of retreating, now looked at Boss Luo with a serious face and said, "I have a feeling, maybe we can find the truth inside. Aren't you afraid?" Claudia nodded, then shook her head. "I am, but I want to know the truth more." Boss Luo bent down and picked up the backpack with the magic lamp. This was Mr. Otto's backpack, the Mr. Otto who had turned into sand. Luocio suddenly gave the backpack to Claudia. "This is—" Claudia opened it and found that it was the old oil lamp she gave away before. She couldn't help but feel confused. She didn't know what this new classmate meant behind this action. The boss blinked and said, "Maybe when there is danger, you can really summon a spirit." "You?" Claudia rolled her eyes. The number of times she rolled her eyes in the past 2 days was probably more than the number of times she rolled her eyes in the past 20 years. But she still silently put the backpack on. Although this idea was very absurd, she didn't know why. The more time they spent together, the more she found that she seemed to believe what Roland said more and more. "You are going in?" Arya, who was picking fruits to eat, saw this and quickly ran back. "Don't you want to wait? Your father should be coming out soon, right?" "He came out a long time ago," Claudia said casually, then ignored Arya and walked into the stone door with Luocio. Arya was left outside, scratching his head. He didn't know why these people were so persistent to go in. He looked up at this huge temple and only felt an indescribable sense of oppression. He sat on the ground, sitting on a pile of sand. He didn't know why he suddenly became sad, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Damn it. Boss Luo was still holding the lamp that he took out from nowhere. Although the light source wasn't strong, it could unexpectedly shine far in the dark tunnel. Silence, repetition, and a dark environment could easily cause one's mind to become tense. Some people said that as long as a normal person was imprisoned in a completely dark room for 3 days and 3 nights, it would be enough to cause a person's mind to be close to breaking down. Claudia was vaguely irritated and subconsciously grabbed Luocio's arm. Boss Luo, who was already very good at controlling the absolute defense mechanism, let Claudia grab his arm. Feeling the strength of Claudia's fingers, Boss Luo suddenly said, "If you see another version of yourself, what will you do?" "Another version of myself?" Claudia couldn't help but be startled. But when she thought of Otto and Roland who had turned into sand and reappeared, she felt a chill down her spine. "Maybe I will feel fear, and even have the thought that I might be an illusion?" Boss Luo blinked and asked curiously, "Feel that you are the illusion? Generally speaking, shouldn't you think that the other person is the illusion?" Claudia shrugged. "When I look in the mirror, I often feel like I'm fake. Maybe it's because my way of thinking is different from others, or maybe it's because of the greater psychological pressure. What about you? If it were you, how would you feel?" "I don't think so," Luocio said calmly. Claudia opened her mouth and looked at Luocio with dissatisfaction. "How can it be like that? Only you can ask others, but others can't ask you?" Boss Luo smiled and said indifferently, "Because this assumption won't be true, so I can't predict how I will react to this question when I know it won't be true. Just treat it as if I can't answer you." "Rational?" Claudia frowned and sighed. "Speaking of which, you have always been very calm. You are a guy who is more rational than anyone else." Boss Luo said with some yearning. "I also have moments when I'm not rational. I've been like that before." Claudia only took it as the words of a mature person who had experienced a lot. It was like an old man who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, talking about his youth with a calm tone. She suddenly felt that Roland was very similar to Otto, the Otto who had turned into a pile of sand. "If you want to find someone to talk to, Her words were quickly interrupted by Boss Luo. Boss Luo said casually, "We seem to have caught up with the new Mr. Otto." Claudia was startled and looked forward. Indeed, she could vaguely see a figure standing motionlessly. Judging from his clothes, it was indeed the new Mr. Otto from just now. The place where Mr. Otto stood still was an entrance. There was a door. This was a cyan stone door which was one size smaller than the huge stone door outside. There were many inscriptions on the two doors. In addition, there was a huge scale engraved on the door. The pattern divided the two doors into two. Mr. Otto was holding a notebook and recording the inscriptions on the door. He didn't seem to notice that someone had come behind him. What is written on it? Perhaps because she already knew the previous Otto, Claudia couldn't adapt to this Mr. Otto whom she didn't know at all. Therefore, her tone naturally became more casual, unlike that of a stranger. The evil of the world, the good of the world. Otto didn't care about Claudia's tone and said, "Behind the door, there is something to measure good and evil. It is a place of judgment. Sinners shouldn't enter." Sinners? Claudia was stunned and just looked at the door in front of her. There was no other passage here. It seemed that only by opening this door could they continue to go deeper. Although this door looked smaller than the huge stone door outside, its quality was obviously not something that ordinary people could push open. Even 8 or 10 adults wouldn't have the strength to do so. Maybe there is some mechanism. Claudia thought for a while. The mechanism that can open this door. Is there a groove here? She pointed at a spot below the left door. There was indeed a groove there, which looked like an eye. Mr. Otto frowned at this time and said, "Legend has it that when Horus and Seth fought, Seth dug out his left eye. What is missing here seems to be Horus' left eye. This should be a shameful thing for the gods. This temple of Horus, the sun god, shouldn't use this kind of prop to open the door." Boss Luo, who didn't know much about the ancient Egyptian civilization, asked curiously, "Who is Seth?" Mr. Aotoa turned around to take a look, but did not pay any attention to him. He just kept looking at the inscription on the door. Claudia came over and said softly, "Legend has it that Seth is Horus' uncle. There was an 80-year-long battle between them. The ancient Egyptians believed that Seth was the god of the earth, in charge of the desert, storm, and war. He was the god of strength. On the contrary, Horus was the god of the sky. Simply put, Seth and Horus were enemies. But in fact, Seth was also the patron saint of the ancient pharaohs for a long time." Boss Luo nodded, then took out the eye pendant obtained from Otto, who had turned into sand. Where did you get this thing?" Claudia couldn't help but be stunned. Her voice made Mr. Otto look at her subconsciously. When he saw the pendant in Boss Luo's hand, Mr. Otto's expression changed slightly. He quickly walked over and reached out to take the necklace from Luocchio's hand. After looking at it carefully, he asked the same question as Claudia. "As far as the current situation is concerned, the important thing is not its origin, but whether it can open this door, right?" Luocchio looked at Mr. Otto, who didn't wear any accessories at this time. "Let me do it." Mr. Otto took a deep look at Luocchio, then quickly walked to the left door and carefully put the eye pendant in his hand into the groove. It was completely gentle, as if the eye pendant was originally a part of this door. When the pendant was completely inserted, the crack between it and the door disappeared, and it was completely integrated with the door. At this time, a slight vibration began to come from below them. The door in front of them suddenly moved. The two doors closed inwards in an instant, and a strong light shot out from inside. At the same time, a terrifying suction force appeared at this time, directly sucking Luocchio, Claudia, and Mr. Otto directly into the door. When the three of them were completely sucked into the huge blue stone door, the door directly closed. She felt the moisture on her lips, and even gradually woke up in a trance. The moment she opened her eyes, a figure was in front of her. She couldn't see the figure clearly, but her reaction was unusually quick. She immediately pushed the figure in front of her away, showing an extremely frightened expression. "It's me, Claudia." Boss Luo's voice slowly went deep into her heart, and woke her up from some kind of fear. After waking up, Claudia was still sweating all over, and the hot air seemed to be able to roast her internal organs, making her feel uncomfortable. Where is this? She looked up at the surroundings. There were a lot of yellow buildings, and they were all not tall bungalows. At this time, she seemed to be in an alley between two bungalows, but even though there was shade, there wasn't the slightest feeling of coolness. It seems to be a city. From Boss Luo's mouth, Claudia heard an answer that made her even more confused. What did he mean by seems to be a city? But soon, Claudia understood the true meaning of Boss Luo's words. She got up and walked out of the alley, and the originally quiet environment suddenly became unusually lively. The streets were unusually flat, and there was an endless stream of people. People were talking and walking, the women with children, and the men were doing all kinds of work. Their clothes were the same as the exhibits in the museum that had been passed down to this day. Even the accessories on their bodies were the same. How did we? This was no longer a question of whether she could accept it or not. Facing such a scene, Claudia subconsciously stepped back. How did we suddenly come to this place? Why don't I remember what happened at all? Could it be that we are like Arya and Otto, who also lost the relevant memories? Door. After the door was opened, what happened? She hoped that Luochu behind her could give her an explanation. Boss Luo quickly explained to her, "Don't worry, we didn't lose our memories, but after opening the door, we came to this place. I can guarantee that this process only took a very short time. Of course, you fainted, which took up most of the time. So, that door is actually connected to this space?" Claudia looked up at the sky. The sky was so big that she couldn't see the limit. Such a huge place obviously couldn't be hidden in the temple outside. She could only use the word space to describe this. "Have you woken up?" At this moment, a figure walked into the alley quickly. Claudia looked back and found that the person was Mr. Otto. She just realized that she didn't see Otto after waking up. At this moment, Mr. Otto changed into a set of clothes that were almost the same as the people outside. Maybe he just changed. Mr. Otto walked over quickly and said in a low voice, "This place is much bigger than I thought. I've asked the people here. Guess what they call this city?" "What is it called?" Claudia asked subconsciously. Mr. Otto said with a serious face, "Heliopolis. Heliopolis City, this place." Claudia was shocked. "What did you say? Heliopolis? The legendary Sun City. Home of the gods among the ancient Egyptians, here?" Mr. Otto nodded slowly. At this moment, noises suddenly came from outside the street. The sound was cheering. It seemed that something had happened. They walked out of the alley together, and the people on both sides made way for them. A magnificent motorcade appeared on the street. Soldiers led the way, elephants pulled the carriage, and there were many attendants behind. A young woman with a beautiful figure was sitting on the shelf pulled by the elephant. "They call her Princess." Hearing the cheers of the people around, Mr. Otto suddenly said in a low voice, "Yamanlana." Claudia was dumbstruck when she saw the woman on the shelf slowly walk past her. The young woman on the shelf looked exactly the same as her. "Princess Yamanlana?" Claudia was lost in thought, and couldn't help murmuring, "Me?" Chapter 15:26. The princess's team had already left, from their eyes. But the people on the street didn't leave because of this. They were still kneeling on the ground, eagerly shouting the princess's name. "Yamanlana. Did you see that just now?" Claudia suddenly turned around and looked at Luochu and Mr. Otto behind her. She looked a little flustered. The princess's appearance? Boss Luo and Mr. Otto nodded almost at the same time. Claudia subconsciously rubbed her head, and seemed to be a little unsteady. She whispered, I seem to be a little uncomfortable. Can we find a place to rest first?" Mr. Otto nodded, then took down the bag on his back and opened it in front of them. "I found some clothes, no matter where this place is, and I don't know what dangers there will be here. In short, let's just integrate into this place first. Not only the clothes but also some of their decorations and even some things that looked like currency." Only God knew how long he had been in a coma, and only God knew where Mr. Aotua had gotten these things from. Claudia didn't have time to think about these at this time. She just felt her head was in a mess. She hurriedly walked into the depths of the alley. Seeing Boss Luo and Otto turn around at the same time, she hurriedly changed into the new clothes. When she appeared in front of Boss Luo and Mr. Otto again, Mr. Otto showed a rare smile. "It's really the princess. Please, please don't joke." She was somewhat unconfident at this time. Joke? But the woman who was cheered and surrounded by the people in the convoy just now was. That place should be the palace of this place. Mr. Otto looked at the huge building at the end of the long street at this time and muttered, "They called this place Heliopolis City, Sun City. But in fact, I have never heard of this Princess Yamanlana in the ancient dynasty. We don't know which dynasty this is, but it's very likely that there are some discrepancies with the history we know." Claudia, whose mind was in a mess, had no time to think about the information given by Mr. Otto. Her mind was in a trance. She was probably still thinking about Princess Yamalana, who looked exactly like her. When Mr. Aotual went out to inquire, "Did you find a place for us to rest temporarily?" Boss Luo suddenly asked. "Come with me." At this time, Mr. Otto said indifferently, "There is an empty house nearby. It doesn't look like it is often occupied. The princess is back. The princess is back." In front of the huge palace gate, the soldiers made way for the princess's convoy to enter through the main gate. The respect the soldiers had for the princess came from the bottom of their hearts, because the princess had always been the guardian of the palace. She had led troops out many times to resist the terrifying beasts in the desert, killing those terrifying creatures time and time again. That was why the kingdom was stable and prosperous today. In the palace, the old king and the ministers of the kingdom had been waiting for a long time. Princess Yamalana was the only descendant of the king, and the ministers of the kingdom all believed that with Princess Yamalana's achievements, she would very likely become the new king, Pharaoh. But there was no such precedent in the past, so they didn't know what the old king was planning. While he was deep in thought, Princess Yamalana, surrounded by her attendants, slowly walked into the hall. At this moment, the king on the throne opened his arms and revealed a satisfied smile. "My daughter, Yamalana, you are the pride of the kingdom. Congratulations, you've once again successfully stopped the invasion of those monsters. I have asked people to prepare a celebration banquet. Tonight will be a happy night. I will let all the people in the city call for you, my daughter." Princess Yamalana looked around at this time, but said in a low voice, "Father, please cancel tonight's celebration banquet. Now is not the time to celebrate." The princess's speech surprised the ministers, and also made the king frown. The king was puzzled. "Don't you like the celebration banquet I held for you? The most outstanding men in the kingdom will be at the banquet. I'm going to choose a husband for you tonight." The king's words made the ministers whisper to each other. The princess was indeed at the age of marriage, but the king had never been anxious about this matter. Now that he suddenly mentioned it, it seemed to have revealed a lot of information. At this time, Princess Yamalana said in a low voice, "Father, although we successfully defeated the giant beasts in this expedition, the casualties this time are unprecedented. Not only that, the number of giant beasts this time, even the individual beasts, are far more than before. If the number of giant beasts increases again, and their individual beasts become stronger again, I'm afraid it will be difficult for our soldiers to resist. What the soldiers need is training and sharper weapons. We shouldn't waste our wealth on luxury and pleasure. My daughter, there is no war without death." The king waved his hand at this time and said indifferently, "What you said, the soldiers who came back first have already told me. I think this is the first time the giant beasts attacked with all their strength. After this, they will be greatly weakened, and I'm afraid they won't be able to organize an invasion in a short time. So don't worry." "Father?" Princess Yamalana looked up. At this time, the king waved his hands and said in a low voice, My daughter, you came back from the original route, and you are physically and mentally exhausted. I allow you to go back and rest, and prepare well for tonight's banquet. I have already asked people to prepare the most beautiful clothes in the kingdom for you. Tonight you will be the most beautiful woman in the banquet. All the young men will go crazy for you. Go. This is an order. Yes. Princess Yamalana could only leave slowly. After all, he was the king, and he had the highest power, her father. After the princess left, the king also asked the ministers in the hall to leave and go back home to prepare for tonight's banquet. The king himself also returned to his bedroom. During the time when the princess was away, the king had a new concubine, and he doted on her very much, and he would see her every day. Your Highness, the king is in a hurry to hold this banquet this time. I heard that he wants to find a husband for you at the banquet. Princess Yamalana, who was walking back to her own palace, heard the reminder of the maid beside her, and gradually slowed down her pace. She said expressionlessly, "The disaster of the giant beasts hasn't been cured yet, and I don't have time to find a husband." The maid lowered her voice and said, "I heard that the king's new concubine seems to be pregnant. The state preceptor said that this will be a prince. But this matter, the king ordered that it must be kept a secret. I heard it from the concubine's servant." Princess Yamalana, who had slowed down her pace, suddenly stopped. At this time, she frowned, and her expression changed a few times. Finally, she said in a low voice, "Is it really the state preceptor's words?" The maid hurriedly said, "I just heard. The state preceptor hasn't appeared in the palace recently, so I couldn't find out. But the state preceptor did come back once, about a month ago, and then left again." Princess Yamalana nodded. While thinking, she waved her hand and asked the maid to leave. Then she walked into the bathroom. "You stay outside, I want to have a good rest." "Then tonight's banquet," Princess Yamalana said indifferently, "since I'm going to choose a husband for me, it must be someone I like. I'd like to see if any of the young talents in the city is good enough for me." The maid was stunned, and then she smiled bitterly. She was afraid that those young talents who came with excitement tonight would be unlucky. Princess Yamalana was brave and good at fighting, and she had been learning how to govern the country from the state preceptor since she was a child. She was a person who excelled in both the pen and the sword, and couldn't be compared to those young talents in the city. She hoped that the princess wouldn't embarrass them too much. Then I'll go and prepare a dress for the princess." The maid lowered her head and said, "No need." Princess Yamalana waved her hand and said, "Wipe my armor clean, I'll wear it to the banquet tonight. Oh, the great sun god, when will you let the princess get married?" The simple condition of the room was beyond Claudia's expectation, but it was much better than sunbathing outside. Mr. Otto was like a local who had lived in this city for a long time. He had successfully bought a lot of things along the way. After arriving at this empty room, he started to make food. Boss Luo found it interesting, so he helped him and asked questions at the same time. Claudia, who felt that the two people's styles were a little strange, rubbed her head hard again. She felt a headache, not only because her head was in a mess, but also because she was surprised that Princess Yamalana had the same appearance as her. In fact, when she woke up in this place, she felt an inexplicable pain in her head from time to time, and she even felt breathless. She always thought that she was suffering from heat stroke, so now she was listless and weak. But there was another incredible thing. She found that she didn't seem to need Mr. Otto's translation, and she could understand the language of the people living in this city, as if she was born with it. She once secretly asked her new classmate Luaccio if he could understand the language of these people, and got a positive answer. Claudia swore that she had never come into contact with this language in all her previous education. There were more and more unexplainable things, and her head was getting more and more painful, as if it was going to split open. After a while, something that made Claudia's head hurt even more happened. A guy jumped into this empty room. Yes, he jumped in, from the window position. He had tanned skin, wore bloomers and a white top, and had an anxious look on his face. The guy who jumped in was now nervously hiding under the window. When he saw 6 pairs of eyes looking at him, he immediately gestured for them to keep quiet. It seemed that someone was chasing him outside the room, but soon he passed by the window. The guy who hid in patted his chest and heaved a long sigh of relief. Mr. Otto frowned and said, "Arya, when did you come in? Didn't I ask you to wait outside? Do I know you? Who is Arya?" The dark-skinned guy stood up at this time, looking at Mr. Otto with a puzzled look, then shook his head, and then walked quickly to Claudia. This guy suddenly tidied up his messy clothes, then knelt down on one knee. "Oh, dear Princess Yamelana, I didn't expect to meet you in this place. It's really my honor. I'm Ibn, and I have admired you for a long time." "Ibn?" Claudia was stunned. Boss Luo blinked, as if he thought of something. Mr. Otto frowned at this time, and then relaxed. Claudia suddenly took a deep breath. She also thought of something. Since there was Princess Yamelana, who looked like her, then there was also Ibn who looked exactly like Arya outside. It was not impossible. She suddenly looked at Mr. Otto and Luochio. Since there were people who looked the same as her and Arya, would there be people who looked the same as Mr. Aotua and Luochio? "Thank you for your respect." Claudia took a deep breath at this time, and said with a bitter smile, "But obviously, I'm not the Princess Yamelana you're talking about." "What?" Ibn jumped up at once. "There are actually 2 people who look so similar in the world." Ibn moved closer to Claudia at this time. From left to right he almost touched her inside and out. "My God! Such a magical thing, it's like a miracle. Are you really not Princess Yamelana's twin sister? Why don't we steal the real Princess Yamelana secretly, and then pretend to be her? We can get a lot of wealth." If this guy's skin was not much darker than Arya's outside, and his hair was much longer, he was obviously another Arya, just as friendly, just as shameless. "Mr. Ibn, have you lived here since you were a child?" Boss Luo suddenly asked at this time. "Sir." Ibn unceremoniously grabbed the food made by Mr. Otto at this time, and shook his head and said, "What a strange name. Well, yes, I grew up here since I was a child. People here call me Ibn the Brave Lion. By the way, where do you live? Why have I never seen you before? You look so similar to Princess Yamelana, and you're at this age, there should be people who know about you." "We came here from the outside," Mr. Aotua said calmly. "Because we got lost, we accidentally came here." Ibn suddenly opened his eyes wide. "Are there really humans outside? You came here from the outside? How did you escape the attack of the giant beast? My God, is there really a way to the outside? I feel like I'm going to be rich." "So, this guy is really not Arya in disguise." Claudia couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 15:27. Giant Beast. What kind of giant beast? Hearing this, Mr. Otto's interest was piqued. He immediately asked. Perhaps it was because he was too familiar with Arya's personality. When he saw Ibn who looked exactly like Arya, Mr. Otto immediately tossed out a few coins. Arya liked this thing very much. Obviously, this Ibn in front of him was the same. He caught the coin that Mr. Aotua threw to him, chuckled, and said without thinking, "In the desert outside Sun City, there are many enormous beasts living in it. These giant beasts, even when they were cubs, were even larger than the strongest lion. Legend has it that the adult giant beasts have the ability to climb over the city wall. They live around the desert, and anyone who wants to pass through the desert will become their food. So no one has ever walked out of this desert, and no outsiders have ever come in. It's the first time I've seen people from the outside. What does it look like outside?" Mr. Otto listened and couldn't help but frown. "According to what you said, these giant beasts, as long as a dozen of them come to adulthood, I'm afraid the city wall here can't resist at all. How did you survive for so many years?" Ibn said, "Because there is the protection of the sun god here. those giant beasts can't attack at all. Only on the day of the longest night every year, when the power of the sun god is the weakest, those giant beasts will attack. But every time they will be repelled. Claudia was already confused. She suddenly found that she seemed to have transmigrated from a normal plane to a strange plane. Giant beasts? The power of the sun god? But Ivan didn't stop talking. When I was young, I heard from the elders that every time the longest night came, this place would be greatly damaged and countless people would die. Until the last 10 years, the days have become better. 10 years ago, Princess Yamelana, who was only 10 years old, led the soldiers to wipe out the giant beasts outside. This is a very effective method. Through this kind of wiping out, it can effectively reduce the number of giant beasts during the longest night. Now, every time when the giant beasts invade during the longest night, we can easily resist them, and that's why we have such a prosperous kingdom now. So Princess Yamelana's reputation in the kingdom is comparable to the pharaoh's, or even higher. Claudia immediately said with disdain, "Since the princess is so important, you still have the nerve to steal her away?" Elia shrugged his shoulders and said, "As long as we continue to wipe out the ultralisks, we can effectively reduce the number of ultralisks. Even if it's not the princess, it shouldn't matter, right? In this way, it doesn't matter whether there is a princess or not. Maybe our king, the pharaoh, really hopes that someone can steal the princess away." Nonsense. What kind of father would want his daughter to be stolen? Claudia glared at him. Perhaps it was because she was too similar to Princess Yamelana that Ivan remembered something bad when he was angry. He swallowed his saliva and lowered his head. I'm not talking nonsense. Otherwise, the pharaoh wouldn't be in a hurry to hold a banquet and choose a husband for the princess. Ivan mumbled with his head lowered. I'm not talking nonsense. Otherwise, pharaoh wouldn't be in a hurry to hold a banquet and choose a husband for the princess. Choose a husband? When did this happen? Claudia asked subconsciously. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt her heart tighten. Tonight. Ivan laughed at this time and said, "Princess Yamelana just came back victorious after wiping out the ultralisks. The pharaoh ordered a celebration banquet tonight and invited all the young talents in the city to attend the banquet in the palace. The purpose is to find a suitable husband for the princess. This is something that the whole city knows. I also plan to sneak into the palace tonight. Maybe I can win the princess's heart and become the prince consort." When she thought of the scene of Princess Yamelana and Ivan together, Claudia seemed to see Elia hugging her and wanting to do something strange. She suddenly jumped up and pointed at Ivan angrily. "In your dreams! Go to hell, bastard! You're not the one I want to marry." Ivan sneered at this time. "Look carefully, you're much worse than Princess Yamelana. You look exactly the same, but your temperament is really incomparable. TSK. Claudia suddenly sneered, took out a pistol from her backpack, pointed it at Elia. Ivan and pulled the trigger without saying a word. "Don't stop me, I won't kill this guy. But if I don't scare him, he won't know how to behave." Ivan immediately hid and screamed, "Don't be impulsive! Don't be impulsive! I mean, the princess temperament can't be compared with you at all. You're the princess. You're the princess. I understand, you're really Princess Yamelana. Artifact. Only Princess Yamelana has the magic. I know I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong. I've seen it before. Damn, why didn't I think of it? Artifact. I shouldn't have said those words. Your Highness, please spare my life." At this time, Ivan knelt on the ground and began to cry bitterly, which made Claudia embarrassed. She subconsciously put down the pistol. "What did you say? Artifact? What artifact?" Ivan cried at this time and said, "Princess, don't joke anymore. Who doesn't know that only you can use the artifact? The artifact given to you by the sun himself." Artifact. Claudia subconsciously raised the pistol in her hand and said hesitantly, "You mean, this gun?" Ivan quickly nodded and crazily hinted to Claudia if she could put down the artifact first and not point it at him. What's going on? Claudia couldn't help but look at Luocio and Mr. Aoto. Boss Luo thought at this time and said, "It seems that if we want to know something, we may need to meet Princess Yamanlana in person. Yes. Maybe we can find a clue to leave here." Mr. Aotua also nodded. "Meet? How do we meet her?" Claudia frowned. Boss Luo and Mr. Aotua, at this time, actually stood up at the same time to Ivan, who was kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. Claudia was stunned and suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. You don't want to?" Boss Luo walked slowly at this time and smiled. "It's also my first time doing this kind of thing. I feel that it will be a very good experience. Student Claudia, thank you for your hard work. Don't come over. I'll do it myself." She couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. A huge bathtub with dense mist. Princess Yamanlana, who had an impressive figure, walked slowly at the edge of the bathtub. The water droplets slowly flowed down her smooth back and reached her upturned buttocks. She had finished washing, and the warm water had washed away her tiredness. She walked slowly to the table where the clothes were placed, but she didn't take new clothes. Instead, she picked up another thing, a metal weapon that was placed on top of the clothes and pressed on top of the clothes. The gun was a black pistol. Princess Yamanlana quickly grabbed the pistol, then turned around and made a shooting posture with a very standard movement. Her fingers gently pulled the trigger, and the black pistol made a click sound. The gun was empty. Princess Yamanlana silently took back the pistol. First, she put on the holster, then put the pistol into the holster, and then put on the new clothes. At this time, the maid outside brought in the armor that Princess Yamanlana ordered before she went into the bath. This was the armor that the princess would wear every time she went to war. This time, when she came back from the war, it was stained with blood, but now it was obviously cleaned. Princess Yamanlana put on the armor with the help of the maid, and then asked indifferently, "How's the banquet preparation?" The maid quickly replied, "It's almost ready. Some ministers have even brought their children here early, and now they are arranged to rest in the palace outside. Princess, do you want to observe these young talents before you start?" "No," Princess Yamanlana said indifferently. "I want to go to the temple first." "The temple? Now?" The maid couldn't help being surprised. "But the banquet?" "After the banquet starts, I'll be there." Princess Yamanlana waved her hand. "Anyway, before the banquet starts, father must have a candidate in mind, right?" "But," the maid seemed to be hesitating, "but if you want to enter the temple, except for the time of sacrifice, you need the king's permission. As long as you don't say it, who will know?" Princess Yamanlana looked at her maid and suddenly smiled. "You will keep it a secret for me, right?" Of course." The maid quickly lowered her head, not daring to look directly into Princess Yamanlana's eyes. "I'm absolutely loyal to the princess." "That's good." Then, the maid only heard the footsteps of Princess Yamanlana leaving. Until Princess Yamanlana was completely gone, the maid dared to raise her head, and she was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. Many times, she even felt that the princess's gaze was much more terrifying than that of the pharaoh when he was angry. When she was 10 years old, she led an army to wipe out the giant beast. In the past 10 years, no one knew how many giant beasts had died in the hands of this princess. The murderous aura naturally emitted from her body was something that ordinary people couldn't bear. Even so, after hesitating for a while, the maid finally gritted her teeth, and then quickly left the bathing pool, and walked toward the palace of the pharaoh. But just as she walked out of the bathing pool, her body instantly fell to the ground. Before she fell, there was a sound. A gunshot. The maid who fell to the ground had a finger-sized hole on her forehead, but there wasn't much blood flowing out. Instead, the maid's face suddenly cracked open from the wound. The crack began to spread all over her body. In the blink of an eye, the maid's body was completely shattered, and turned into a pile of sand on the ground. In the distance, Princess Yamanlana turned around without even looking at her. When she turned around, her cloak fluttered. I feel that we are too reckless. What if we are discovered? What should we do? At this time, Claudia felt that her legs were a little soft, not the kind of soft feeling when someone touched and played with her inner thighs, but the kind of soft feeling when it was difficult to walk and her legs were trembling. So are you Princess Yamanlana or not? At this time, Ivan also felt that his legs were a little soft, not the kind of soft feeling when someone stabbed him with something hard in the back, but the kind of soft feeling when he was trembling and scared. Haven't we successfully come in? Mr. Otto said lightly. He was wearing the guard's uniform in the palace. Ivan and Boss Luo were also wearing the guard's uniform. Mr. Otto got them back after he went out for a while. God knows how he got them back? She always felt that after he came to the City of the Sun, he was like a fish in the sea, and could do everything easily. That's true. Claudia was still somewhat conflicted. She recalled how she almost gave herself away when she walked into the palace through the eyes of the guards. Her heart was still thumping wildly at this moment. Remember, you are Princess Yamanlana now. Your eyes and your words can decide the life and death of these soldiers and servants. Mr. Otto said indifferently, so, you don't need to be afraid of everything here. It's them who are afraid of you. Why do I feel that you are very skilled when you do these things? Claudia couldn't help but frown. Mr. Otto laughed it off. Now the sun was setting in the west, and the sky had turned yellow. Seeing that the sun was about to disappear, the banquet in the palace at night had entered the preparation stage. Perhaps because it was a celebration at night, all the servants in the palace were busy. The security was not as strict as imagined. In fact, the security of the palace was not strict at all. Maybe it was because the kingdom had always been threatened by the giant beasts in the desert, and in the kingdom, except for creatures like thieves, it had always been as peaceful as the kingdom of heaven. We sneaked into the palace, then the question is. Claudia looked at the man in front of her solemnly. Do you know how we can find Princess Yamanlana? Ivan said he didn't know, and crazily hinted to everyone that since they had sneaked in, they could let him go, and he would never tell on them. Mr. Otto was more direct. He directly knocked Ivan unconscious on the ground, took off his clothes, and hid him in a big vat, then said indifferently, We don't need to find her, we just need to wait for her to come to us. Since this banquet is held for the princess, we just need to go to the banquet venue. Boss Luo said, There seems to be some time before the banquet, can he walk around? Walk your ass. Don't walk around. Claudia suddenly put her hands on her waist and said fiercely, very fierce,